Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Shyam Kagod here. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, can you please give me a thumbs up so that we can start with the discussion? Done then. Let's start. So, yesterday, what we have done, we continued with the discussion on international trade, correct? Yesterday, we began and continued with the concept of international trade. And in international trade, what we have discussed yesterday, we started with the concept of nominal exchange rate and a real exchange rate. First one was nominal exchange rate and a real exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate compares one currency with another currency. Real exchange rate compares what is the price of a product in India with the price of a product in USA. That is in terms of goods. In terms of goods, the comparison is done. And what was the important point? What was the inference that we had to carry from the concept of a real exchange rate? Whenever real exchange rate for a country increases, if real exchange rate starts to increase, export competitiveness will come down. And if it will go down, export competitiveness will start increasing. That was a basic idea of a real and nominal exchange rate. Then we discussed nominal effective exchange rate and real effective exchange rate. The basic idea is whenever you talk about exchange rates, we generally talk about rupee versus a dollar. But rather than talking only rupee versus dollar, because India will conduct trade with many countries, we have to consider rupee value against a basket of currencies. Rupee value against a basket of currencies. And that is basically a concept of nominal effective exchange rate. What is the value of Indian rupee against a basket of currencies? And whether you talk about NEER or REER, it is always given in the form of index. It is given in the form of index published by Reserve Bank of India. If NEER increases or if NEER decreases, then REER, right? Trade competitiveness. If REER increases, if REER decreases, what is the importance of all of that? Yesterday we have discussed. After that, we started the discussion on the concept of the real exchange rate. Whenever it is equal to 1, we talked about the concept of purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity, right? PPP, purchasing power parity. And basic idea is whenever real exchange rate is equal to 1, right, it is basically referred to as currencies are at purchasing power parity. Meaning what? Whenever nominal exchange rate, whatever is the nominal exchange rate, you can use that to purchase the same set of goods or services in two different countries. That is called as a purchasing power parity. Right. Then we discussed the concept of the foreign trade policy, FTP, foreign trade policy, FTP 2023. What are the provisions under FTP, etc., etc. We have discussed. After that, we discussed the WTO, World Trade Organization. Okay, World Trade Organization. Right. So, in case of World Trade Organization, what is the evolution of World Trade Organization? Why did we have a World Trade Organization? Initially, to begin with, the concept of GATT was there. Why WTO is a better than, right? The concept of a GATT is basically an agreement, whereas a WTO is an organization. What is the structure of a WTO? What are the important agreements under WTO? How the dispute settlement takes place under WTO, right? These are the things that we have discussed yesterday. We are supposed to continue with the concept of economic integration. Let's continue. We have covered till WTO yesterday. Let me continue the discussion. Concept of economic integration. Now, how do you define what is economic integration? Please understand. Economic integration, in a nutshell, simply means a policy of discriminatory reduction or elimination of trade barriers for the members within the group. I'll repeat the statement. What do you mean by economic integration? It is a policy of discriminatory reduction or elimination of trade barriers for the members within the group. Now, many of you ask me why this is defined this way. What is the meaning of the definition? Let's start with a very simple example. All of you remember the examples that I've given yesterday. For example, I said India and Australia have signed a free trade agreement. Correct? We have discussed this yesterday also. and I say India and UAE have signed a free trade agreement. Now, very simple question to you people. I'll take the same example that I took yesterday. Can I say this remote control? I repeat, this remote control, if it will come to India from USA or any other trading partner, it might attract a 10% customs duty. But if this remote control is imported from, let's say, Australia or UAE, rather than imposing 10%, certain exemptions are given now. And as a result of this, Government of India might impose a 0% tariff on it. Yes or no? Again, just talk about what we have discussed yesterday. I'm just telling you what we have discussed yesterday. Nothing new in this. If India signed a free trade agreement, can I simply say we are going to impose or we are going to follow a discriminatory policy? We are going to follow a discriminatory policy wherein right, India from other countries will have one rate of taxation, but if it is imported from, let's say, Australia or UAE, because we have signed an agreement, right, we will have different rate of taxation, much lower. We can have 1%, we can have 2%, we can have 8%, we can have even 0%. So can I say this is a discriminatory policy? All of you agree? This is nothing but a discriminatory policy. This is called as economic integration. This is referred to as economic integration, a discriminatory policy wherein in the group, whatever countries are there in the group, they will start providing a discriminatory tariff or they will reduce a tariff whenever they will conduct a trade with themselves. Is it okay? Whenever they'll conduct trade with themselves, they will reduce or eliminate tariffs so that the trade between the countries or amongst the countries, whoever is there in the group, the trade within the group will start increasing. Can I give you a current affairs example? Have you heard of RCEP? Let me know. Have you heard of RCEP? And second, have you heard of ASEAN? Right, ASEAN is basically a group of 10 countries, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. RCP is a regional comprehensive economic partnership. 15 countries are there. So I hope you understand the logic here. Trade groupings are there, where multiple countries are there, trade members or trading partners are there. They will have a policy where they will eliminate tariffs whenever they will conduct a trade with themselves. This policy is called as economic integration. Economic integration. Now, how do we achieve economic integration? There are multiple stages, multiple types of agreements are signed. Let's go one by one. First one is called as a preferential trade agreement. Second one is called as a free trade agreement. Third one is called as a customs union. Fourth one is a common market. Fifth one is economic union. Right, I'll go step by step. Listen to me very carefully and try to remember one example for each one of them. Don't try to by heart all the examples because multiple trading groups are there. Very difficult to remember. Let's start. What is this preferential trade agreement? What do you mean by PTA? I'll start with a very simple example. Then I'll ask you a question. Please participate and you'll have to tell me the answer. Let's say there are two countries. Okay. Let's say there are two countries, country 1 and country 2. In example 1, right, let's say from country 1 to country 2, $30 billion worth of goods and services are exported. And from country 2 to country 1, let's say 70 billion worth of goods and services are exported. Now, can I say overall, I repeat, overall bilateral trade is worth $100 billion. Anybody has a problem? Overall bilateral trade between the two countries, bilateral means two. Overall bilateral trade between the two countries is $100 billion. Now, what if I say in example 1, both the countries will sign agreement where they will reduce the tariffs on, let's say, 40 billion worth of goods and services. I'll repeat the statement. Overall bilateral trade is how much? $100 billion. But I am saying both the countries are signing an agreement where both the countries will reduce the tariffs on $40 billion worth of goods and services. Example 1. And example 2, both the countries will sign an agreement wherein they are going to reduce the tariffs and eliminate tariffs on, let's say, 95 billion or let's say $97 billion worth of goods and services. Now, can I say, please look at it and answer to the question? Can I say coverage of the bilateral trade is much more higher or comprehensive in example 2 compared to example 1? It's a very simple question, by the way. Based on this, can I say coverage under the agreement, right? The two countries are signing an agreement where they are reducing the tariffs or eliminating tariffs. Coverage of the trade in example 2 is much higher compared to example 1. And there are two students who are asking how. My goodness. Out of $100 billion, 40 billion. Out of $100 billion, 95 billion. Right? I don't know what you're thinking of before, right, asking me how. Prove it. Right? So automatically example 2 is much more comprehensive in coverage, much more wider in coverage compared to example 1. So come back to the definition here. Look at the definition of PTA. Look at the definition of PTA and please tell me, is it right basically example 1 or not? Two or more countries agree to reduce tariffs on number of products, but this agreement will not cover larger trade, will only cover small part of the trade, will not cover a very large trade. Can I say example 1 is basically PTA? Yes or no? Think of it. Just think of it. Example 1 is PTA. Total bilateral trade is 100 billion. We are not covering most of the trade. We are covering only a part of the trade. We are covering only a part of the trade, not a large share of the trade. So that is called as a preferential trade agreement. And before I go forward, just to make you understand, I've given these numbers 40 billion, 95 billion, 100 billion, etc. Please understand, some of you will ask me, sir, tell me in percentage, what do you mean by PTA? How much percentage trade should be covered? There are no fixed numbers for this. There are no fixed numbers, right? I cannot simply say below 40% it is PTA, above 40 it is FTA. No, no fixed numbers are there. But for a fact, all of you will agree when I say example 1 covers only a part of the trade, example 2 covers most of the trade. And that's a basic idea. That's a basic distinction between what is a preferential trade agreement as well as a free trade agreement. Now come to the second one, free trade agreement, FTA, free trade agreement. In case of free trade agreement, two or more countries will sign the agreement to reduce and eliminate tariffs. But in case of free trade agreement, substantial trade is covered. Large part of the trade is actually covered in case of FTA. Can I go forward? Example of a PTA is India and Chile. Example of FTA is India and Sri Lanka, India and UAE, India and Australia. All these are the examples of free trade agreement. Now, before I go forward, let me give you a couple of more terminologies related to FTA. Whenever you talk about India Australia agreement or India UAE agreement, they will use the terms such as comprehensive economic, comprehensive, comprehensive economic partnership agreement, comprehensive economic partnership agreement. This is generally one type of agreement that is signed. They will also use one more terminology. They'll say comprehensive economic cooperation agreement. Cooperation agreement. That is, in simple terms, if you are reading newspaper, they will use either CEPA or they will use CECA. Have you come across these terminologies? SEPA and SECA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. They will use either the SECA or SEPA. Now, many of you basically ask me, sir, what is this idea of a SEPA or SECA? Please understand, these are types of trade agreements only. These are types of trade agreements only. But why these are referred to as comprehensive economic agreements? Reason is, whenever you talk about FTA, whenever you talk about free trade agreement, we generally cover goods and services. We generally cover goods and services. But when you say comprehensive economic agreements, in addition to goods and services, the trade agreement might cover investments. The trade agreement might cover investments. Trade agreement might cover intellectual property rights, etc. So now you tell me, if you sign a free trade agreement, which is much more comprehensive in coverage, comprehensive means much broader in coverage, it is not just going to cover trade, it is going to cover, right, investments in both of the countries. It is going to cover intellectual property rights. It is going to cover data sharing, etc. Can I call such free trade agreements as comprehensive economic agreements? Yes or no? Can I call such agreements which will have more coverage rather than covering only goods and services trade? Can I call these agreements as comprehensive economic agreements? That is the reason they will also use a term called as a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, or they will use a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement. Right? So either of the terminologies are used. Do not panic, do not worry about it. For example, in the context of India and Australia, this it's an example of free trade agreement. But we are not just covering trade in goods and services. We are going beyond goods and services. Hence, it is basically a comprehensive economic agreement. Right? It is not just FTA. It is going beyond the goods and services. It is much more comprehensive. That is one more terminology. Next, there is also a term called as early harvest trade deal. Early harvest trade deal. Now, what do you mean by early harvest trade deal? In fact, in the context of India and Australia, we signed an early harvest trade deal. Let me ask a very simple question. Then I'll come back to this. Let me start with a very simple example and I'll ask a question. Next year, let's say hypothetically, next year, you'll go to UPSC examination hall. Right? The question paper is given to you and OMR sheet is also given to you. Now you have been given the question paper. Please tell me how many of you will go question by question, solve the first question, then go to the second question, and only then go to the third question, only then go to the fourth question, etc. And how many of you will look at question number 1, very difficult, skip it, go to question number 2, you know one statement, you do not know remaining 2 statements, skip it. You'll go to question number 3, you know the answer, mark the question number 3, then go to question number 4, right, etc. So please tell me how many of you will opt for strategy 1, how many of you will opt for strategy 2. Right? Don't you think a rational approach will be to take up strategy 2? And surprisingly, some of you are saying strategy 1. My dear, don't do that. This is my advice to you. If you want to do it, do it. But my advice to you is, your argument is, I will solve first one. Only after solving the first one, I'll go to the second one. Only after solving the second one, I'll go to the third one. What if the first question itself is the most difficult? You will spend half an hour. Even after that, you will mark it wrong. Right? So again, and so just apply common sense. You should not go with, as far as I'm concerned, you should not go with strategy 1. You should go with strategy 2. Solve the easier ones which you are guaranteed of first. Then pick up, right? If there is any elimination method, pick it up. Then pick up out of 3 statements, you might know 1 or 2 statements. Then pick up those kind of questions. This would be my advice to you. If I ask you why, why would you take strategy 2? Why not strategy 1? Don't you think most of you will simply say, but what, sir, if I take up strategy 1, in the beginning 10 questions are very difficult, then it will take a longer period of time for me to solve all the questions. Yes or no? Most of you will give me this answer. Apply the same logic to trade agreement. Apply the same logic to trade agreement. Let's say here is India and here is Australia. Okay, I'll take a very simple example. Listen to me carefully. On one side is India and the other side is Australia. Let's say they want to sign a trade agreement covering 100 goods. Just a simple example. They want to sign a free trade agreement covering 100 goods. Now, can I say out of 100 goods, there will be certain goods. Let's say out of 100 goods, let's say there are 20 goods on which negotiations will be completed very quickly. Yes or no? Negotiations can be completed, talks can be completed very quickly. It will not take a lot of time. Both the parties will come to an arrangement very soon. Now, listen to the next point. Remaining 80 products, imagine it will take a long period of time. You have to negotiate a lot for remaining 80 products. What makes perfect sense to you? What makes sense? To negotiate all the 100 goods, take more time, sign the agreement, or 20 goods, you have agreed to it very, very easily, sign one agreement covering only 20 goods, continue negotiating, finish right the negotiations for remaining 80, then sign a full agreement for 100 goods. Right? Don't you think the second strategy is a much better compared to the first one? Because in case of first strategy, you need to wait to negotiate for all the 100 goods. That might take a longer period of time. Why do you want to wait for so much amount of time? At least 20 products, you have come to an arrangement. You already have agreed to 20 products elimination on tariffs. Sign an agreement covering only 20. Then continue negotiation. Cover remaining 80. Then sign an agreement for all the 100 goods. And this is called as early harvest. Look at the name. Early harvest. All of you understand the term harvesting? Let me know. All of you understand the term harvesting? Right? You will sow, then you will harvest. Harvest means basically, cut the standing crop. Early harvest means rather than waiting for all the negotiations to complete, you already have completed negotiations for some of the goods under the trade agreement. Sign an agreement for them. Continue negotiations. Once you agree for all the remainder of the goods or services, then sign a full-fledged agreement. That is called as early harvest trade deal. It was there in the current affairs. In the context of multiple countries, we have signed early harvest trade deal. Please be very careful. Okay, so one is PTA, second one is FTA. Third one, let me go to the third one, customs union. Third one is customs union. Now follow this very carefully. There are two countries. In a group, let's say there are only two countries. Both the countries have arrived to an agreement. They have signed a trade deal. And as per the trade deal, they will provide biased tariffs. They will provide exemptions, reduced tariffs for each other's trade. For example, if you and me have signed a trade deal, you will export the product. I will impose a 0% tariff on your product. I will export the product to you. You will impose 0% tariff on this product. That is a biased elimination of tariffs. Now understand this carefully. What if there is a third country which will conduct trade with both of these countries? Outside the grouping, there is a third country. It will conduct trade with C1 as well as C2. Now please understand, customs union means both of these countries, right? That is the countries which are there in the grouping, both of these countries now will have common tariffs whenever they will conduct a trade with any country outside the grouping. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Listen to me very carefully. India and Australia, if they sign, they have not signed it. If they sign a customs union, then both of these countries, when they will conduct trade with USA, India and Australia will have the same rate of tariff when USA will conduct trade with India and Australia. If they conduct trade with China, then India and Australia will have the same tariff when they conduct trade with China. If they conduct trade with Germany, both India and Australia will have the same tariff when they conduct trade with Germany. All of you okay with this? That is a concept of customs union. Customs means what? Imports and export duties. Import and export duties. So the group, right, within the group, whatever member countries are there, if they sign a customs union, then outside the group, if they conduct trade with any country outside the group, they will have same tariffs applicable to this, the country outside the grouping. That is called as a customs union. Okay. Any example of this? European Union. Best example of right, the customs union is European Union. Within European Union, multiple countries are there. All of you know this, right? Anybody in the classroom who says, sir, I thought European Union was a one country. No, right? European Union is a group of countries, and it is an example of customs union. Now you conduct trade with country 1, country 2, country 3, doesn't matter. All the countries will apply the same tariff when you export the product to any country within the European Union. So any country outside the grouping, the tariffs applicable will be the same by all the countries which are there in the group. That is a concept of customs union. Fourth one is common market. I'll start with an example only. European Union. Common market example is European Union. And even economic union, to a very great extent, European Union is an example. Now, what is this common market? A group of countries which will have a free movement of labor, a free movement of capital. Right? Common market refers to a customs union, that is a group of countries where they will allow free movement of labor from one country to another country, free movement of capital from one country to another country. For example, European Union. Within European Union, that is whichever countries are there within the European Union, people can easily move from one country to another country to search for a job. Investments can easily go from one country to another country, and they can invest in another country within the European Union. That is a concept of common market. Now, for example, another example, I'll just give you an example here. Can you, without taking a visa, I repeat, can you, without taking a visa, go to Australia? Think of it. Can you simply go to Australia and start searching for a job? Just see what they will do to you. No, you are not allowed to do that. Why? You cannot simply say, I've signed a free trade agreement. My dear, free trade agreement is for goods and services. It is not a common market. It's not a common market. If it was a common market, then you could simply take a ship, right, or a vessel or a boat, go to Australia and start investing in Australia. Start searching for job in Australia. That would be allowed. But have we signed a common market with Australia? No. Right? Have we signed an agreement of common market? Absolutely no. We have signed a free trade agreement with Australia. Okay. So that is a concept of common market. And finally, economic union. Economic union basically is a common market where the group, that is the countries within the grouping, will have same fiscal policy, will have same currency, will have same currency, will have same fiscal policy, will have a same parliament, right, etc. So such type of a grouping is called as economic union. Okay, best example for economic union is European Union itself. All of you know this. Within European Union, there is a common currency, and that is euro itself. Common currency is nothing but euro. There is basically a executive, shared executive is there, right? A shared parliament is there. So that is a concept of economic union. Okay, so first one is PTA. Only a small part of trade is covered. Next one is FTA. substantial trade is covered. Third one is a customs union, where the members within the group will have a same tariff structure when they will trade with countries outside the group. Then there's a common market, a customs union, where people can easily move from one country to another country. Investments can move easily from one country to another country, is called as a common market. And finally, economic union, where a common market where there is a common currency, there's a common parliament, common fiscal policy, monetary policy, that is called as economic union. Done? Right. So that is basically the concept of, right, economic integration. Economic integration. Now, please let me know. Can I say, as you keep on moving from one level to the next level, that is, if you remember the number, if you keep on moving from 1 to 5, can I say complexity in the system will start increasing? Yes or no? If you move from 1 to 5, right, that is a PTA, FTA, CU, CM, and right, the economic union, can I say the complexity in the system, that system becomes much more complicated. It becomes much more complicated. Complexity will keep on increasing. Now, what has been the experience? What has been the experience of India in terms of signing such agreements? Please remember this. Whenever you sign agreements, whenever you sign trade agreements, what we expect is overall trade will start increasing, and the countries which are there in the group, countries which have signed the trade agreement, their trade, their exports will start increasing. What has been the experience of India on this particular front? What has been the experience? Niti Aayog has reported that India has signed multiple trade agreements, but the problem has been that with the signing of these trade agreements, the overall trade has increased, but India has not been getting benefit. Other trading partner has been getting the benefit. What do you mean by this? Let me start. Look at this example. Please come back to this example. Look at this example one. Can I say, before signing the agreement, let's say hypothetically, before signing the agreement, can I say the overall trade, bilateral trade is $100 billion? Right? I'm asking you a very simple question, by the way. We have already looked at it. $100 billion. Now, let's say both countries, C1 and C2, sign the trade agreement. Okay, both C1 as well as C2 sign the trade agreement. And after the trade agreement is signed, from C1, from C1, let's say exports will increase to 40 billion to C2, and from C2, exports will increase to $100 billion. Now, question number one. What is the total bilateral trade after signing the agreement? What is the total bilateral trade after signing the agreement? Can I say $140 billion? $140 billion. That's the first one. Second one, compared to pre-agreement, can I say post signing the agreement, the trade deficit of country one has increased. I'll repeat the statement. Look at the situation, and can I say, compared to before signing the agreement, after signing the agreement, the trade deficit, I'm using a term trade deficit of country one has increased. Before signing the agreement, the trade deficit was $40 billion. Before signing, the trade deficit was 40 billion, and after signing, the trade deficit is $60 billion. Right? So from 40 billion, it has increased to, right, 60 billion, which means after signing this trade agreement, it is country two which has got more benefits compared to country one. All of you okay with this? After signing, right, after signing the trade agreement, it is country two which has got more benefit compared to country one. This is exactly what Niti Aayog says has happened to India. I'll repeat it. This is exactly what, right, Niti Aayog says has happened to India after signing multiple trade agreements. Right? We have signed trade agreements, and as a result of this, our exports have increased. No doubt, our exports have increased. But the other party, the other side, right, the other party in the trade agreement has got more benefit compared to us. And just to prove the point, Niti Aayog has quoted one free trade agreement, that is India and ASEAN. India and ASEAN, which have signed. India is one country, ASEAN is a group of countries. 10 member countries are there in ASEAN grouping. So we can simply say India and ASEAN have signed a free trade agreement. And after signing the free trade agreement, what has happened? Please look at the data here. Please look at the data. The overall trade, between India and ASEAN between 2011 and 2017 has increased from $50 billion to $70 billion. Overall trade has increased. But have a look at the other side of the argument here. The trade deficit that India had with ASEAN before, right, at 2011, from 2011, the trade deficit that India had with ASEAN was $5 billion, and now it has become $10 billion. So, in a span of 7 years, the trade deficit with ASEAN has actually doubled. It has actually become two times compared to what it was at the time of implementation of the agreement. So, now can I simply say, at least now can I say, ASEAN member countries have got more benefit out of the agreement compared to Indian companies? Yes or no? Can I say ASEAN member countries have got more benefit out of this agreement compared to India? And some of you are asking, how? My dear, look at it. No, look at it. It's basically common sense. If they are exporting more compared to us, are they not getting a benefit? Right? So I hope you understand. So trade deficit of India has increased. Why it is happening, etc., I'll tell you later. Please don't worry. And the trade deficit in 13 sectors out of total 21 sectors which were covered under the ASEAN agreement, the trade deficit in 13 sectors has actually increased, which means after signing the agreement, we are facing problems rather than getting benefits from the agreement. And that is the precise reason. That's a precise reason. Now, Government of India, if you're reading newspapers, you'll know this. Now, Government of India is renegotiating, it is reviewing lot of these free trade agreements. In fact, tomorrow is Friday. I'll give you certain article regarding this. Government of India is reviewing, right, many of these free trade agreements. Why? Government says we are not getting the benefit, other parties getting more benefit. So why should we keep entering into such agreements? Why should we continue such agreements? Right? So we want a review of these agreements. Done? Right? So what are the other issues? The FTAs have made the imports much more cheaper, thereby affecting domestic manufacturers. Don't you think this will be a natural outcome? For example, many of you ask me, how is that possible? Imagine, right, this bottle is manufactured in, right, let's say UAE, and a similar bottle is manufactured in India. Until now, a tax rate of 20% was applicable if you import the bottle. Now, India will sign a free trade agreement with UAE. The tax rate on the bottle which is imported will reduce from 20% to 0%. Please tell me, as a result of this, can we have a situation wherein imported bottle will become much cheaper compared to domestically manufactured bottle? Yes or not? Imported bottle, because of this reduction and elimination of tariff, will become much cheaper compared to domestically manufactured bottle. As a result of this, the demand for that bottle will be very high. Domestic companies would be affected. That also has happened. And next one, the imports in many of these cases, the imports have been much higher compared to exports that we are doing. And before signing the agreement, we had a trade deficit. And after signing the trade agreement, the trade deficit has actually become much more wider. Right? So these are some of the issues or concerns regarding India's experience with these free trade agreements. India's experience with these free trade agreements. Now, many of you ask me, why? Why is this happening? Why is that Indian exports are not faring well, etc.? I'll come back to this, don't worry. Let me give you certain pointers here. Why Indian exports are not increasing at a much faster pace? Why are we not able to bridge this right? Basic, the trade deficit, etc. These are some of the reasons. Point number one, the trade barriers, other types of trade barriers have been increased by many trading partners. I'll repeat the statement. Generally, in the trade agreements, we think and we cover the tariff barriers. We generally target tariff barriers. We'll reduce them, we will eliminate them. But please think of it and do let me know, apart from tariff barriers, are there any other barriers which can restrict India's exports even into the countries with whom we have trade agreements? Let me see. Yesterday we have discussed this. Non-tariff barriers, correct? So in FTAs, right, in SECA, SEPA, etc., we will discuss, we will ask the other trading partner to reduce and eliminate tariff barrier. But what if they rise or they basically implement non-tariff barriers? And as a result of non-tariff barriers, don't you think, right, your imports will start, your exports will start getting affected? All of you will agree with me? Right, so I hope you understand, non-tariff barriers can be erected, can be implemented, right? Even then, if you have a trade agreement, it's not necessary that your exports will start increasing. Second one, cost of logistics in case of India is comparatively higher. Very often we have discussed this. Cost of logistics. What do you mean by logistics here? Logistics refers to various activities that you will have to undertake to move the product. I'll repeat the statement. Logistics refers to various activities that you will have to undertake to move the product. For example, can I say transportation, packaging, right? Packaging, right? Let's say warehousing. All these are part of logistics sector only. So in case of India, the cost of logistics is very high. If the cost of logistics is higher, can I say market price automatically will become higher? Correct? All of you will agree? If the cost of logistics is higher, market price would be higher. And if the market price is higher, do you think your exports will be more competitive or less competitive to begin with? And forget about tariffs, forget about taxation. Right? When the cost of logistics is higher, don't you think market price would be higher? And to begin with, your export will be less competitive. Right? So you can sign an agreement, but even then, because of higher logistic cost, your product will be having a very high market price. That is also a problem. Third one, interest rate in the domestic market compared to other countries. Interest rate in case of India is higher compared to other countries. And what is the impact? Just think of it. You are manufacturing this bottle. Okay, you are manufacturing this bottle. The bank will give you a loan, but the rate of interest on the loan is on a higher side. Right? Rate of interest charge is higher. And if you ask me how is that possible, etc., etc., please look at what has happened to rate of interest in the last 1.5 years in India. You will understand it. So when you take a loan to manufacture this bottle and you pay rate of interest to the bank, and if the rate of interest is higher, can I say automatically the market price of the bottle will also increase? Just think of it. Yes or no? Automatically, the market price of the bottle will also increase. In fact, yesterday I told you one example. The state government of Goa. Did you people check it? The state government of Goa is imposing cesses on mining companies now. State government of Goa is imposing cesses on mining companies, iron ore mining companies. If these kind of taxes and cesses are imposed, don't you think cost of manufacturing will automatically increase? And when that will increase, market prices will increase, and your export competitiveness automatically will keep on declining. It's a very simple rational argument, right? Your export competitiveness will keep on declining. So higher interest rate, taxes imposed by the government or other charges imposed by the government can also become a problem in reducing export competitiveness. What about global slowdown and inflation in Western markets? I gave you one example for this also. I told earlier about diamond exports from India. Did you people get time to check an article on this? If not, tomorrow I'll give it to you. Don't worry. Diamond exports from India have been affected now. Right? People are losing jobs. Manufacturing is getting affected. Surat, which is the epicenter for export of diamond products from India, it is suffering because of this. Why? There is a slowdown. There is a very high recession. The demand for these products in USA, European Union, etc., it has fallen. Right? So automatically, don't you think India's exports? You might have signed an agreement. You might have signed an agreement, but because there is a slowdown or recession, etc., in the trading partner countries, your exports automatically will come down. Done? Right? So these are some of the issues. These are some of the issues which are faced by Indian exporters. And that is right said to be largely the reason why Indian exports are not able to get the benefit of such free trade agreements, and why the other countries are getting more benefit. Okay, done. Now whenever you sign these agreements, there are also certain factors to consider. There are also certain things that you need to consider, right? And these factors will definitely have a huge impact whether your FTAs, free trade agreements, whether these will be successful for you or not. What are these factors? Point number one: if you're going to cover a sector in this FTA, you'll have to be focused whether this sector is competitive or not competitive. I'll repeat the statement. Whether you cover this, when you cover this sector within FTA, you'll have to cover only those sectors which are already competitive. Only then exports will start increasing. Otherwise, what you might end up doing is you will import more and more from the trading partners. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by that? And what do you actually mean by this? For example, can I say there are certain sectors where India is very, very competitive today? Very competitive, right? For example, in case of India today, toys, correct? Toys, India's toy sector is competitive. Rather than importing, we are exporting now. What about mobile phones? Think of it. Mobile phones, I'm not talking about laptops. What about mobile phones? Mobile phones we are manufacturing, we are exporting now. So can I say there are certain sectors where India's production is much more than what is the demand in India, and we are able to export these products. And lot of right allied sectors in agriculture sector, meat exports, correct, meat exports, etc. So there are various sectors where India is very competitive. And on the other side, there are also some of the sectors where India is not very competitive. Can I give you a current affairs example? Tell me, should India sign a free trade agreement with any other trading partner where laptops will be covered and India will agree to eliminate barriers on the import of laptops? I'm taking current affairs example. I'm taking current affairs example so that you understand it. Right? Should India cover a sector where we do not have competitiveness? Competitiveness means the demand is very high, supply is not able to meet it. Supply, we are not able to meet the demand, as a result of which already imports are higher. Now, what if I sign a free trade agreement with another country where one of the product will be laptops, personal computers, and government of India will agree and say no tariff whatsoever, import it, at absolutely no tariff, 0%, then my dear, every product that is manufactured in China, I'm sorry, every product that will be consumed in India would end up getting imported. Already we are a very major importers, huge amount of importers of PCs and laptops. And if you sign a free trade agreement and under which laptops are covered, don't you think whatever is produced in China, we will take it, export it to India? Yes or no? Right? So I hope you understand whether your FTAs are successful or not. For you, one factor that you should consider is cover only those sectors which are very competitive. Which are very competitive. Can I give you one more example? Have you come across any FTA that India signs where we are going to allow free inflow of agriculture related commodities. Think of it. Very sensitive for India. Right? Where is there any agreement where government of India says agriculture commodities from that country, I will allow it to get imported into India at 0% rate? You will not see that. Why? This is a very sensitive subject for India. Very sensitive. Hence, they simply say it will be kept under sensitive list. We do not want to touch it. I do not want agriculture to be covered under this. Right? So that is a basic reason. That's a very basic reason. So cover only those sectors which are competitive. Which are competitive. Second one is you might basically sign an agreement targeting tariff barriers, but there are also multiple non-tariff barriers that you should also consider and ask the trading partner to reduce them. Third one is income of the countries with which the agreement is signed. This is very nice point. I'll tell you why. As of now, India has signed multiple free trade agreements. But tell me, does India have a free trade agreement with USA? Think of it. Current affairs. Does India have a free trade agreement with USA? No. India does not have a free trade agreement with USA. Point number one. And point number two, think of it. India conducts a trade with USA. We already have a trade with USA, and India has a trade surplus with USA. India already has a trade surplus with USA. Point number two. And point number three, USA is the largest market in the global economy. USA, right, is the largest market in the right global economy. So don't you think India should target and enter into a free trade agreement even with USA? Rather than signing free trade agreement with, let's say, 10 small countries, 10 small countries, don't you think India will get more benefit by signing one agreement with USA, where India's exports will get more market access to the USA market? Right? That is the argument. So government of India, and by the way, this is a way forward. Please think of it. Yes, there are a lot of difficulties. I'm not saying it is going to be easy. International trade is never easy. USA will not easily accept it. But this is your recommendation. If at all a question is there, these are your recommendations. How do you improve India's export market? These are your recommendations. India should sign a free trade agreement with larger economies such as USA, which is India's one of the largest trading partners. You should target such markets as well. And fourth one, very tricky, very tricky. Relaxations provided when the trade agreement and MFN for the countries and the MFN for other countries. Slightly tricky, let me explain it. Please listen very carefully. Please listen very carefully. Let's say this bottle, right? Country one, this bottle is flowing from multiple countries. Okay, let's say one of the countries is China and another country is C2. Listen to me very carefully. Okay, so one of the countries from which we are importing bottle, C1 is importing bottle, is China. And let's say hypothetically, MFN, most favored nation, the rates of MFN is 2%. So from China, when the bottle will come, 2%. When it will come from country 3, 2%. Country 4, 2%. Right? All the countries same MFN rate. Now imagine a situation. Country 1 and country 2 will sign a free trade agreement. Country 2 and country 1 will sign free trade agreement. And as a result of this, this 2% on the bottle, let's say, will come down to 0%. From 2%, it will come down to 0%. Now, despite reducing the tariff, despite reducing and eliminating the tariff, what if the product in China is much more cheaper compared to the same bottle or similar bottle manufactured in country 2? I'll repeat the statement. We have signed a free trade agreement, and in this bottle, we have reduced the tariff if it will come from C2, we will reduce the tariff from 2% to 0%. What I'm saying is, although we have eliminated the tariff, what if the bottle is much cheaper in China? Which means, despite reducing the tariff to 0%, even then, can I say, imports from China will continue to flow into country one? Think of it. Any problem? I'll repeat it again. Just to make you understand much more easily, I'll give you numbers also, but do not worry about calculations. What if this bottle, right, is manufactured, cost is 90 rupees in China, and what if it is manufactured at 100 rupees in country 2? So when it will be imported into country 1, 0%, it will cost 100 rupee. It will be imported from China at 2%, even now bottle will cost you 92. So even after reducing the tariff, don't you think country 1 will continue to import the bottle from China and not from country 2? Correct? Right? So that is also one factor. Relaxations provided under the trade agreements and MFN for other countries. Right? So that is basically the point here. That's basically the point. So these are some of the factors which will determine whether the FTA that you sign will be successful or not successful. Okay, done. So let me go forward. What has the government of India done? What kind of reforms has the government of India implemented to promote exports? Yesterday we have discussed RODTEP, and we've also discussed foreign trade policy 2023. Yes or no? Yesterday we've discussed RODTEP as well as FTP 2023. Let me talk about some more reforms. Third one is a PLI, production linked incentive. Production linked incentive, PLI. Now, what is this production linked incentive? Listen very carefully. Government of India has identified 14 industries. Government of India right now has identified 14 industries. Initially, only 3 were there. Now it is 14 industries. And in all these 14 industries, government says, whenever you meet certain parameters or criteria, whenever you meet certain parameters or criteria, I will be providing you with a certain incentive. I'll be providing you with certain incentives, right? And from one industry to another industry, incentive will change. But listen to me very carefully. You meet certain parameters or conditions or criteria, I will provide you certain incentives, because these incentives are connected to your performance. It is connected to certain parameters. We'll call this as production linked incentive. We'll refer to these as production linked incentive scheme, PLI scheme. Now, what is this concept of a PLI scheme? How we are going to determine, etc.? What is the objective? Objectives are very simple. Point number 1, Government of India wants to promote manufacturing in India. They want to promote manufacturing. Point number 2, Government of India wants to promote investments in India. Point number 3, Government of India wants to promote employment generation. Point number 4, we want to reduce the import dependence. And point number 5, we want to promote exports from India. These are the 5 very important objectives. I'll repeat it. Listen very carefully. 1, we want to promote production, that is manufacturing. Second one is we want to promote investment, that will lead to higher capital formation, etc. Third one, we want to promote employment generation, because if you're going to invest more, manufacture more, automatically employment will increase. Fourth one, right, we want to reduce the import dependence. We are importing a lot of these goods into India. I want to reduce those imports. And fifth one, I want to promote more and more exports from India. I'll give you one example. Please tell me, is Government of India promoting all the 5 objectives within this industry or not? Mobile manufacturing. Let me know. Mobile manufacturing, right? Because the government of India says this is one of the success stories. A success story is under PLI, mobile manufacturing. Until very recently, we used to import a lot of manufactured mobiles into India. We used to import a lot of manufactured mobiles into India. And now, under PLI, we are promoting manufacturing of mobile phones in India. Right, to such an extent that we are not only reducing our imports, we are able to export mobile phones now. We are able to export mobile phones to the international market. Right, so promote investment, capital formation, production in manufacturing sector, employment generation, right, reduce imports as well as promote exports. These are the five very important objectives of production linked incentive. Now, I said 14 industries are covered. 14 industries are covered. All of them are related to manufacturing. Service sector is not target under PLI. Now, next important point, how the incentives are decided. How incentives are given. Right? Incentives are generally calculated based on one or the parameter, such as, let's say, how much extra sales you have done, how much additional or incremental sales you have done. What do you mean by incremental sales? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine you are a mobile manufacturer, you are part of PLI, you have been covered under PLI scheme now. Let's say last year, right? That is, I'll just take simple number. Last year, you sold mobiles worth, right? Let's say 100 crore rupees. Last year you sold mobiles worth 100 crore rupees, and this year you will sell mobile phones worth, let's say, 120 crore rupees. Can I say additional sales or incremental sales? Additional sales or incremental sales is 20 crore rupees here. Yes or no? Additional sales or incremental sales in this example is 20 crore rupees, and government of India will provide you incentives based on this incremental sales. How much is your additional sales compared to the right base, right? When you are covered under scheme, what was your additional sales compared to that? That on that additional sale or incremental sale, government would provide incentives. For example, right, I'll take a simple number again here. What if the PLI incentive for mobile manufacturing is 5%? It simply means 5% of your 20 crore will be how much here? Can I say 1 crore rupees? 5% of your 20 crore will be 1 crore. Government will give you the cash incentive, right? It will provide you the cash incentive of 1 crore rupees. Think of it. It will be cash incentives of 1 crore. And beauty of this PLI is, right? Do you remember the concept of duty credit script? Let me know. Yesterday we have discussed this. Do you remember the concept of duty credit script? In case of duty credit script, did government of India provide you subsidies in the form of cash? Let me know. Do you think under duty credit script, government of India provided you the subsidies in the form of cash? No, certificates. Certificates, tradable certificates, right? And there are conditions. What is a condition? Can you use this? Let's say if you remember yesterday's calculation, $35. Yesterday, correct? $35. $500 and 7%, $35. So let's say this script is worth $35. Can you use this script to pay wages to your employees? Can you use the script, right, to pay electricity bill? No, it can be used only to pay taxes when you import a product, right? You cannot use it for anything else. You can either sell it to transfer it or use it for payment of taxes. But instead of 35, right, let's say 35 in the form of script, what if I give you 35 in the form of cash? What if I give you 35 in the form of cash? You can use it for any purpose you want. Any purpose. You can use it for any purpose that you want to use it for. That's a beauty of PLI. Please remember this. Okay, PLI, it is going to provide incentives in the form of cash. Incentives are given in the form of cash. Whereas in case of RODTEP, right, incentives or subsidies are provided in the form of a duty credit script. Done? Right? So these are certain very important points regarding production linked incentive. So Government of India says, again, please understand, I'm going to give you evaluation now. Before giving you evaluation, be very careful. These kind of reforms, you should not evaluate the performance of these reforms in a very short duration. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. You should not evaluate these kind of reforms which have been implemented for a very, very short duration, because you cannot expect returns or gains to the economy in a short duration. You will only get it in a longer duration. You'll have to wait generally. I hope you understand. I'll give a very simple example, right? Very simple example. Imagine in a particular village, a dam is constructed, right? Don't you think benefits of the construction of the dam, you will come to know the complete benefit of it in a longer duration, correct? If you have constructed the dam, the right, let's say the minister will cut the ribbon within 1 month. Can you evaluate what has been the performance of the dam, whether it was beneficial or not beneficial, etc.? No, you cannot do that, right? So I hope you understand the logic that I'm trying to convey to you people, right? These reforms are very important reforms, and before I give you the evaluation of it, point number one should be, or your way forward conclusion should be, we will get lot of benefits in the longer duration, and we are trying to evaluate the scheme for a very short duration, right? So please remember that. Now, what has been the benefit? Multiple companies either have already invested or have promised to invest under PLI. Already lot of investments have happened or will continue to happen, which the companies which are covered under PLI, they are going to make investments. That is the point number one. Point number two, because of this, certain sectors, best example, mobile manufacturing, we have been able to see that production has increased. Rather than importing, we are exporting some of these products. So there have been benefits. No doubt there have been certain benefits associated with the concept of PLI. But there are also concerns regarding it. There are also issues or concerns regarding it. What are the issues or concerns? Point number one, many of the companies have complained to the government of India that the conditions which have been set up under PLI, conditions which are there under PLI, that is, you achieve this, then I will give you incentive. So the conditions that have been given under the PLI are very strict, right? Some of these conditions are not easy to achieve. I'll give a very simple example. One of the conditions is generally associated with investment. One of the condition under PLI is associated with investment. Annually, you'll have to keep on investing this much, minimum this much amount of money. You tell me, during pandemic, or let's say during 22 or 21 for that matter, do you think companies will be interested in making investments when there is very low demand in the market? Think logically. Do you think companies will be interested in investing in an economy where the demand is very less in the market? No, they will wait for the revival of the demand. Only then they'll start investing. So the argument of the company is one is, right, these conditions are very strict. Some of these conditions will not be able to manage them, will not be able to meet them. And if you do not meet the condition, even though we invested, right, up to certain amount of money, you have created jobs, you will not be given any incentive for this. So that is one concern. Second very important concern, this is much more important. There is a concern which has been raised by government of India that, especially in case of, let's say, mobile manufacturing itself, these companies are not manufacturing, rather they are assembling in India. Understand the difference? These companies are not manufacturing, rather they are assembling in India. Now many will ask me, what is the difference between manufacturing and assembling? Please tell me, can you see this bottle, water bottle in front of you? Flask. Okay, right? This is a flask, by the way. Now I will import this cap, I will import this steel bottom part, I will import both of them. I'll fit it together. I will sell this flask in Indian market. This is called as assembling. All of you are okay with this? Anybody has a problem? Right? These are parts. These are parts of the product. So I will import this cap from China. I will import this steel bottom part from China. I will assemble it. I will basically assemble it like this and I will sell it to you. That is assembling. Second, manufacturing. Manufacturing is I will manufacture this in India. I'll manufacture this also in India and I will sell this bottle in India. So don't you think in the second example, value addition for Indian economy is much higher compared to first example? Yes or no? Second example, the value addition to the Indian economy is much better compared to first example. So the concern that government of India has raised is, right, we want you to manufacture here, but you are actually assembling them here. If you're going to assemble them, we will not allow you to get benefits under PLI. Right? We will not allow you to benefit or get any incentives under PLI, production linked incentive. Right? So there is also concern associated with how this kind of a PLI is going to be implemented. Done? Can we go forward now? Right? Can we go forward? Right? This is there in the current affairs. Some of you are asking, where can I get all of this in the textbook? My dear, trust me, you generally don't get these concepts in the textbooks. You will not get this in textbook. In fact, I'll tell you one more problem with PLI. The government wanted to reduce import dependence. Correct. Government of India wanted to reduce import dependence. But the data in fact shows that our imports from China has increased. I'll repeat the statement. You can check it in the Google, by the way. Right? Can check it. Right? We wanted to reduce our import dependence. No doubt, mobile phone imports have come down. But what has happened to the import dependence from China? Our import dependence on the sectors which are covered under PLI has actually increased. It has actually increased. Right? So many of the experts are saying this is because you want them to manufacture this bottle. You don't want them to assemble. Okay, you don't want them to assemble. You want them to manufacture the bottle. But to manufacture this bottle, you'll require raw materials. Raw materials. You'll require technology. You'll require machinery. All of this we are importing from China. All of this we are importing from China, which means our import dependence has actually increased, right? Despite trying to reduce, right, the import dependence under PLI, right? So these are all the concerns or issues associated with the concept of production linked incentive, PLI, production linked incentive. Done? Can we go forward now? Okay. Now, all these are certain very important points. Please remember this. Please remember, all these are very important. Some of you are asking, all these are important. Of course, yes, my dear. Otherwise, there is no point of discussing all these things in the classroom. All these are important. You will not get them in the books. You'll get them in the current affairs. In fact, let me add one more point here. Very recently, Government of India is also making certain changes and is reviewing, signing FTAs, etc., covering a concept called as rules of origin. ROO. Rules of origin. ROO. Now, what is this rules of origin? Let me explain. Please listen carefully. I'll start with an example. Listen carefully. Imagine this is India. Okay. And this is China. I'll take your best friend now. This bottle is manufactured in China. It will be exported from China to India directly like this. Government of India has right an MFN rate, most favored nation rate of 20%. So if this bottle will come from China, Australia, etc., it will be 20%. Let's say India will sign a free trade agreement with country X, okay, right, or XYZ. Because when I say country X, you'll say, sir, X is not a country. You'll say X is a company. So let's say XYZ. So there is a country XYZ. India will sign a free trade agreement. And when India will sign a free trade agreement, now please tell me, if this bottle will be imported from country XYZ, can I say if the tariffs are eliminated, can I simply say government of India will impose a 0% tariff on this bottle now? Correct? Government of India will impose 0% tariff. Now look at what many countries do. Follow this very carefully. The Chinese exporter, rather than exporting directly from China to India, they will first export this bottle to country XYZ. They will export this bottle to country XYZ, and from XYZ, now they will export this bottle to India. Is it okay? First, they will export this bottle from China to country XYZ, and from there, they will export this bottle to India. Many of you ask me why? Why are they doing it? My dear, if they directly export from China to India, how much is the tariff they will have to pay? 20%. But if they route it, this is called as routing. And basically, if they route their product from China to XYZ and from XYZ to India, how much tariff they will end up paying? They will end up paying on this bottle? They will end up paying 0% tariff. Right? Don't you think Chinese exporters or any country's exporters might misuse agreements that are signed by India then? Yes or no? Right? They might simply abuse India's agreements with other trading partners, because we don't have a free trade agreement with China, by the way. Right? Some of you ask, why are they doing it? Let them sign a free trade agreement with India only. My dear, without a free trade agreement, China has a huge amount of trade surplus with India. Right? I'll repeat it. Without any free trade agreement, China has a huge amount of free trade agreement, sorry, a huge amount of trade surplus with India, which means without any agreement, we already have a trade deficit with China. So if you enter into FTA, imagine to what extent they will export the products. And many of you are saying XYZ will do that, etc., etc. Even if XYZ will have the tariff, it's not a customs union. Can they have a tariff of 5% on the bottle? Think of it. Can they have a 5% tariff on the bottle? Even if they have 5% tariff or 10% tariff, is it not advantageous for the Chinese exporter to route the product through XYZ to India? Yes or no? Think logically. Even if they have the tariff, right, they will route it through XYZ. And you cannot tell XYZ that no, 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 you should have a 20% only. That 20% rate is applicable only when India and XYZ are customs union. Correct? That 20% is applicable on Chinese bottle when India and XYZ are customs union. Are they customs union here? No, they are simply signing a free trade agreement. Right? So because they have a free trade agreement, you cannot ask XYZ to have 20% tariff on Chinese product. You can't do that. Right? So they will abuse the system. It is happening. It generally happens. You may disagree, but this is what generally happens. That is the reason now government of India says, whenever we sign the free trade agreement, we will insert one provision, one clause. This provision is called as rules of origin. This provision or a clause is referred to as rules of origin. What do you mean by rules of origin? Whenever I will import this bottle from country XYZ, whenever I import this bottle from country XYZ, the exporter in XYZ has to give a certificate. They will have to show that they have manufactured the bottle. They have not simply imported and exported the bottle. They will have to show that they have done manufacturing on the bottle. They have manufactured the bottle in their country. Certificates will have to be issued. That is a concept of rules of origin. Right? Rules of origin. So if you have rules of origin, government of India can easily find out whether the product is mainly manufactured in China or it has been manufactured in country XYZ. If it is manufactured in XYZ, right, the tariff applicable will be 0%. And if it is mainly manufactured in China, the tariff advantage or the tariff benefit will be denied. We will not reduce the tariff. We will simply apply 20% tariff even it is coming to India from country XYZ. This concept is called as rules of origin. Okay, very important, very often cited in the current affairs. India is pushing for, right, having rules of origin provisions in all these trade agreements now. Okay, so this is one more very important reform. Now, last reform that I want to discuss in this chapter, last reform will be interest equalization scheme. IES, interest equalization scheme. Now, what is this interest equalization scheme? Let's start. I said, or else let me give a very simple example here. Imagine in country 1 and country 2, and let's say country 1 is India. Manufacturers will take a loan in country 1, let's say rate of interest is 8%. Manufacturer will take a loan in second country, let's say rate of interest is 4%. Now, very simple question. Assuming, right, everything else is similar, assume it. Can I say the goods manufactured in country 1 will be more costlier compared to goods manufactured in country 2? Yes or no? Right? Assuming everything else is similar. Right? So obviously, because the rate of interest is higher on the loan, the goods manufactured in country 1 market price would be higher. Now, what if government of India says, here is a bank. Okay, here is a bank. Here is a company. Company will take a loan. Okay, company will take a loan and company will pay a rate of interest. What if government of India says, out of this 8%, out of this 8%, 4% will be paid by government of India to the bank. 4% interest will be paid by the government to the bank, which means, can I say, the company, when they take a loan, rather than paying 8%, now company will pay effectively 4% rate of interest. Can this reduce cost of production? And can this reduce market price and improve export competitiveness of Indian products? All of you agree with me? This scheme is referred to as interest equalization scheme. This is referred to as interest equalization scheme. In a nutshell, if this is very difficult for you to comprehend, in a nutshell, part of the interest burden will be borne, or part of the interest will be paid by the government. Very simple. Part of the interest will be paid by government. Remaining has to be paid by the manufacturer or exporter. And the logic is, if some of the interest is paid by the government, so the interest burden on the company would become lower, manufacturing cost would come down, export competitiveness will be increased. So was introduced as a part of foreign trade policy 2015-2020. It should have been ended in 2020, but government of India, now it has extended it. It has extended it, right, till financial year 24. Right? It has extended till the end of financial year 24. Exporters would be given certain interest subsidy. Exporters will be provided certain interest subsidy. Not all the exporters are covered. Not all the exporters are covered. Only those exporters which will manufacture 416 products or MSME exporters. MSME stands for micro, small, medium enterprises. And if you ask me, sir, why only some of these exporters are covered? My dear, if I'm a very small company, I should be given subsidy. To provide protection, I should be given subsidy. If Tata company is manufacturing and exporting, do you think they require assistance of the government? If Reliance company is manufacturing and exporting, do you think they require assistance of the government? No. Right? So government of India says not everyone will get this. Not every exporter will get it. If you are manufacturing 416 products and if you are MSME, micro, small, medium exporter, right? If you are that or if you are manufacturing this, only then I will give you assistance. Right? So that is the concept of interest equalization scheme. Okay, right. So these are certain very important initiatives of Government of India to promote exports from India. Next questions are there. We'll take up the questions at the end of the session today. Let me take up the next chapter now. Let me start with the next chapter. We'll take up questions. Don't worry. I will not skip any questions. We'll solve all the questions today at the end of the day. So, are there any questions? Are there any concerns from your side regarding what we have discussed? Let me know. Otherwise, I'll go to the next chapter. Some of you might have joined today, right? I can see based on some of the questions, right? Some of you are skipping classes here and there. Suddenly, you will come and say, what is this tariff barrier? My dear, yesterday only we have discussed. Right, tariff barriers. Right, some of you will ask me, what is barrier? Do not skip classes. Do not skip classes. If you skip classes, this is going to become very difficult for you. Okay, because everything is connected. In economics, please remember, everything is connected. You cannot read any chapter as a separate individual chapter. No, everything is connected. For example, can we connect now international trade with GDP growth in India? Think of it. Can we connect international trade with GDP growth? Now, if you have not revised GDP and suddenly I'll say imports and exports will have an impact on GDP growth of India, you'll ask me, how are they connected? My dear, you'll have to remember the formulas. You'll have to revise. That's the reason. Right? So all of this is connected. Do not miss classes. Do not skip classes. Attend classes, revise. That's very important. Okay, how MSMEs are identified? My dear, MSME sectors by nature, these are very, very small enterprises. I'll show you the data later. Don't worry. Right? These invest very less amount in manufacturing or services sector. So government of India says a MSME sector by default would be covered under, right, the interest equalization scheme. What if incremental sales get inflated due to inflation? My dear, from 1 year to next year, inflation will be there. Some of you might be thinking, sir, I want to get more incentives from the government. Rather than selling and earning 120 crore, I will sell and earn at a higher price. I'll show 130 crore rupees. My dear, that companies will not do. For example, many of you will say, no, that's possible. I'll take a very simple example. Imagine this bottle is covered under PLI. Imagine this bottle is covered under PLI. Now tell me, you can show a higher revenue by increasing market price. Correct? You can show a higher revenue by increasing market price, get more incentives from government. Now, if you increase the market price of the bottle to get more incentives, will people purchase the bottle? Think logically. Will people purchase the bottle? Do you think a bottle is an essential product for them? That they'll come running to you and purchase a bottle even at a higher price? No, people won't do that. Right? So you can increase your revenue by saying that I will increase market price, hence I will show more revenue. And if you increase market price, that is nothing but inflation. So I hope you understand the logic behind it. Okay. Trade deficient, etc. all impact. I do not understand the question. SEPA, SECA are nothing but free trade agreements. These are type of free trade agreements. Only argument is in case of FTA. In case of FTA, we generally talk about goods and services. But when you say comprehensive, do you understand the term comprehensive? Look at the term comprehensive. Means we will not just cover trade in goods and services, we will also cover investments. We will also cover, let's say, intellectual property rights. We will also discuss and cover data sharing, etc. etc. So coverage in the agreement is not restricted to goods and services. It is much more wider, comprehensive. That's the reason these are called as comprehensive agreements. Okay. Okay. Okay, let me go to the next chapter now. Subsidies. Let me go to the next chapter, concept of subsidies. Now, what we'll be discussing in subsidies? The definition as well as classification of subsidies. What are the types of subsidies? Concept of direct benefit transfer, e-rupee, and finally WTO and the subsidies. In fact, if you remember, in case of WTO and subsidies, there is a discussion on one agreement, that is agreement on agriculture. Agreement on agriculture. We'll discuss agreement on agriculture in this chapter itself. Let's start. Point number 1. What do you mean by subsidy? What do you understand by the term subsidy? Subsidy basically means it is a benefit given by the government to a company or an individual or a family. I can use one more term. It is a benefit that is given by the government to a beneficiary. To a beneficiary. A beneficiary could be an individual, beneficiary could be a house, a beneficiary could be even company. So whenever a benefit is provided either in the form of a cash or in the form of a kind, I'll give you examples. Have patience. Whenever benefit is given by the government in the form of a cash or in the form of a kind, right, that is basically referred to as subsidy by the government. Now, why do we use the term cash or a kind? Let me ask you a very simple question. How many of you have read that today's any newspaper, any one newspaper, have you come across fertilizer subsidy? Let me know. Sir, I read only Hindu. My dear, even in Hindu, fertilizer subsidy article was there. Right? Even in Hindu newspaper, there is an article on fertilizer subsidy. Sir, I read Indian Express. Great, it was there. Sir, I read, right, let's say Financial Express. In Financial Express also it was there. So argument is simple. If you have read that article, you will come across one point where they will say, government will provide the subsidy in fertilizer so as to ensure that farmers will be able to purchase fertilizer at lower prices in the market. Farmers will be able to purchase fertilizer at lower prices in the market. That is one example. Let me give you another example. All of you heard of PM Kisan? Yes or no? All of you heard of PM Kisan scheme? Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Under PM Kisan scheme, Government of India will provide 6,000 rupees. 6,000 rupees annually. 6,000 rupees annually is given to the farmers who are owning land. Land owning farmers, 6,000 rupees given. I'll give you one more example. Right, one more example. Have you heard of NFSA? National Food Security Act. NFSA stands for National Food Security Act. Under National Food Security Act, Government of India provides 5 kgs of food grains. 5 kgs of food grains free of cost. 5 kgs of food grains free of cost is provided by the government. Now, please look at National Food Security Act as well as a PM Kisan scheme. Can I say one is in the form of a cash subsidy, another one is in the form of a kind subsidy? Let me know. Right? PM Kisan as well as NFSA, can I say one is in the form of a cash subsidy, another one is a kind subsidy. Kind means not in the form of cash. Subsidy is given, but not in the form of a cash, but the product itself is given. So one is in the form of a cash, another one is in the form of a kind. So government can provide subsidies either in the form of a cash or in the form of a kind, but both are collectively referred to as subsidies. What is the need for subsidy? Why should we have subsidies given by the government? Point number 1, government wants to ensure that they will be able to achieve certain social welfare objectives. Any example? Right? NFSA, National Food Security Act. Do you think every individual in India, I repeat, do you think every individual should get free 5 kgs of food grains in India? Does it make sense to you? No. Everyone should not get it. Government of India says we have identified around 80 crore people. In fact, identification is done by the states, but Government of India says around 80 crore people are covered under NFSA. Reason being, right, most of these people will not be able to purchase the food grains at market prices. right? They will not be able to purchase the food grains at market prices. Even if they are able to purchase sufficient quantity, they will not be able to purchase, right? So don't you think providing welfare to the poor people is one of the objectives under subsidy? What about farmers? If you ask the farmers to purchase fertilizer, a bag of fertilizer might cost them 1,000 rupee at least 1,000 rupees, because different types of fertilizers are there. We'll discuss that today. They will have to shell out at least 1,000 rupees. Do you think all the farmers will have sufficient money to pay for these kind of fertilizers? Absolutely no. They will not have sufficient money. So government wants to meet a certain social welfare objective. Certain social welfare objective. Second, government wants people to use a certain types of inputs, better quality inputs. Can I give you one example? LPG subsidy, current affairs. Whatever examples I'm giving here, all these are current affairs examples. In fact, please remember this. Under direct benefit transfer, direct benefit transfer, more than 400 schemes are there. More than 400 schemes. I'm not covering all of them. You don't read all of them. It's of no use to you. But can I say LPG subsidy? Why does government of India provide LPG subsidy? Because government doesn't want you to burn firewood. Government doesn't want you to burn wood because it is polluting. Indoor pollution will be higher. People are affected by it. They will consume the particulate matter and they will fall prey to certain diseases. Children, especially girl children, has been found. They are sent in the villages to collect firewood. Boys are sent to the school. So government of India says, no, I don't want you to do all of it. Displace the firewood with, right, basically the concept of LPG subsidy or LPG cylinders. So improved production or using better inputs, social objective, controlling prices, as well as promotion of exports. We have discussed MEIS, SEIS, right? So don't you think these kind of schemes, subsidies are provided to promote exports only, right? So these are some of the, right, reasons, some of the reasons, right? If you talk about many schemes, you'll be able to apply these kind of objectives. For example, right, electric vehicles. Government of India wants you to purchase electric vehicles, but the price of electric vehicles is very high. Yes or no? Price of electric vehicles is very high. So government of India will provide subsidies under FAME initiative so that when you purchase the electric vehicle, the price is lower. In fact, I gave you one more example. Some of you are asking how government will control prices. My dear, did I not give you example of fertilizer earlier? Did I not give you the example of fertilizer? Right? So if the government doesn't provide subsidies in the fertilizer, the market price of the fertilizer will be very high. Farmers will not be able to achieve it. Right? So these are some of the reasons why government will provide subsidies. But having said so, there are certain concerns. There are certain problems regarding providing these kind of subsidies. One, when government will provide subsidies, again purely economics perspective, don't you think the overall expenditure of government will start increasing? Correct? The overall expenditure incurred by the government will start increasing. And when overall expenditure increases, can that increase the revenue deficit? And as a result of which, it will increase the fiscal deficit, force the government of India to borrow more and more. Right? So there's a concern. There is a very important concern. Right? Deficit will start increasing if government will spend more on subsidies. Second one, lot of these subsidies, government doesn't, right, target beneficiaries. It provides a subsidies for everyone. Lot of these subsidies, government doesn't target, provides a subsidies for everyone. I'll give a very simple example. Very recently, again, don't make it political. Please do not make it political. You are sitting in economics class. Always talk about economics. Very recently, government of India announced LPG subsidy. Correct? Raksha Bandhan. Government of India announced LPG subsidy. They announced LPG subsidy for every consumer in India. But please tell me, do you think rich people should be given 200 rupee LPG subsidy? Think of it. And before you start accusing me, right, how can you talk about central government, etc., etc., let's talk about state governments. Let's talk about state governments also. Some of the state governments are giving free electricity for agriculture sector. Some of the state governments are giving free electricity for houses. Tell me, does every household require free electricity? Think of it. Does every household require free electricity? Absolutely not. You do not require it. So don't you think by providing subsidies to everyone, already our concern is that our expenditure is very high. Our concern is already the expenditure is very high. But by providing subsidies to everyone and not targeting subsidies, are we basically making the situation much worse? Are we not making it? And don't you think, right, we are treating the system unfairly? That poor people should be given more subsidies. Rich people should not be given any subsidies. So by providing subsidies even to the rich people, right, is it not unfair? So argument is that, right? So I hope you understand this. We need to target subsidies. We need to target subsidies. Then we'll be able to reduce the expenditure. We'll be able to control the subsidy expenditure. Okay, doesn't allow for utilization of resources correctly or efficiently. Let me take a very simple example. How many of you have been reading in the newspaper the concern regarding the water levels in India? Underground water levels in India. Many states, the level of underground water has been declining, and it's a concern. It's a concern, by the way, very, very big concern. And please understand this. In that situation, if the state government will say free electricity to agriculture sector, okay, free electricity to agriculture sector, will the farmer use electricity, water efficiently? Think of it. Will the farmers will they be worried about electricity bill? No. They will simply, right, use the pump, draw the water underground, and right, they'll keep on applying throughout the field. Is it efficient utilization of resources? Do you think that is how resources are supposed to be utilized? Absolutely no. And it will also create lot of inefficiency in the market. Now, what is this concept of inefficiency? How subsidies will cause inefficiency? I'll discuss it. Please listen very carefully. There is a policy followed by the union government, minimum support price. And if you have read the newspapers in the last 10 days, I'm pretty sure you have come across this particular term, minimum support price, MSP. What is a minimum support price? MSP is the price at which government will purchase food grains from you irrespective of market prices. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. What is MSP? It is the price at which government will purchase food grains from you irrespective of whatever the market price is. Meaning, let's say hypothetically, government has announced a MSP of, let's say, 1000 rupee per quintal. I'm just taking a hypothetical number here, don't worry. Right? Let's say government of India has announced MSP of 1000 rupee per quintal for wheat. It simply means what is the market price of the wheat doesn't matter. What is the market price? Absolutely no concern. It could be higher than 1000 or lower than 1000. Government will simply give you 1000 and purchase wheat from you. That is a concept of minimum support price. Now come to the point. Please come to the point here. If government will increase MSP for crop X, and now MSP is much higher for crop X compared to crop Y, can I say cultivation of crop X will be very high? Does it make sense or not? Cultivation of crop X will be very high, and we have limited amount of land, right? I hope you understand. We have limited amount of land. If you use more of a land to cultivate X, what will happen to cultivation of Y? What will happen to production of Y? Production of Y will come down, correct? Production of X will increase, production of Y will come down. And if production is higher, supply will also be higher, and supply of Y will be lower. When supply of X is higher, what will happen to market prices? Market price of X will start falling down, and supply of Y is very less in the market prices will start increasing. Right? Don't you see this kind of events are taking place in agriculture sector in the real market? Right? If you ask me, sir, any example of X and Y, right? Generally, X are cereals. Cereals. On the other side, Y pulses. Have you not seen the prices of pulses skyrocketing 100 rupees, 120 rupees, 150 rupees, 180 rupees, etc. at certain point of time? Why does it happen? One of the reason is MSP only. One of the reason is MSP. So now look at the last statement under the criticism against a subsidy and tell me, does it make sense to you or not? Right? MSP, right, creates inefficiencies in the market. It will lead to more production of something, lesser production of something else, right? Supply will be disrupted, market prices will also get disrupted. It will create inefficiencies. Okay, done. Right, so this is the discussion regarding should we promote MSP, I'm sorry, should we have subsidies, why should we not have subsidies, etc, etc. Now, what is a classification of subsidies? What is a classification? How do we classify subsidies? I'll discuss two classifications, right? Both are slightly tricky. Let's take a break. Right, let's take a break. Before I take a break, I'll address your questions. After that, we'll take a break. Then we'll discuss a classification, etc., etc. We'll continue. Okay. Now, explain customs union, my dear. Customs. Customs means the taxes that you impose on imports and exports. If India and Australia are a customs union, then when they conduct trade with any other country, they will have same duties on imports and exports. That is customs union. Okay. Is IAS not a violation of WTO rules that ban subsidies to exporters? My dear, please understand. Under interest equalization scheme, government is not connecting. Please understand my point carefully. Government is not connecting the amount of subsidy you get with the value of exports you do. Do you remember that? Yesterday we have discussed this. If the government will connect how much subsidy you get, if they connect that number with the value of export, that is basically export linked subsidy. But in case of interest equalization scheme, is government of India providing subsidies based on your value of export? No, it is based on the interest rate that is applicable to you, right? So that is the reason it's not a violation. Economic union is a type of a common market where the countries will have a common currency. Countries might have a common fiscal policy, monetary policy. They can even have a common parliament. Right? Such a common market which will have a common currency, etc., etc. It is called as economic union. Okay. Okay. What is yield targeting? Yield targeting means we are providing subsidies to everyone. Everyone doesn't require subsidy, only certain people require subsidy. Okay. Okay, let's stop the discussion now. Let me take a break. We'll restart the discussion at 7:05 p.m. We'll restart the discussion at 7:05 p.m. Please join back at 7:05. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, welcome back. Am I audible? Please do let me know. Am I audible? Nobody wants to answer. Okay, done. Great. Let's start. So the next concept I want to discuss is the classification. Right? How do we classify subsidies? I'll give you two classifications here. Listen very carefully. Listen carefully. And do not try to complicate it. Keep it very simple. Keep it very, very simple. Okay, let's start. First one is a direct and indirect. Okay, so first one is a direct and indirect. Now, what is the concept of a direct subsidy and indirect subsidy? In direct subsidy, the actual cash payment is done to the beneficiary. In a direct subsidy, the beneficiary will get cash. Whereas a indirect subsidy, the beneficiary doesn't receive a cash. The beneficiary rather receives the product at subsidized price. The beneficiary doesn't receive the cash, doesn't receive the subsidy in the form of cash. Rather, the beneficiary will receive the product, good or a service in a subsidized price. For example, please tell me, think of it and do let me know. Today's newspaper, if you have read, fertilizer subsidy. Fertilizer subsidy. Do you think farmer will receive money when they will purchase fertilizer in the form of subsidy? Or else, if you find it very difficult, NFSA, National Food Security Act, we have discussed the NFSA some time ago. Again, one point only I have discussed. We'll discuss all the provisions of NFSA maybe tomorrow or Monday. Not day after tomorrow, Monday. But the question is very simple here. Under NFSA, please tell me, can I say the beneficiary will receive subsidized food grains, correct? Beneficiary will receive subsidized food grains. Beneficiary doesn't get money. They will get subsidy, but in a form where the prices of the product is lowered. Right? So can I say it is an indirect subsidy? Correct? It is an indirect subsidy. And if I want to give you one more example, right? If I want to give you one more example, LPG cylinders. LPG cylinders. Again, be very, very careful with LPG cylinders. Why? I'll tell you. There are two types of subsidies which were announced regarding LPG cylinders very recently. Very, very recently. There are two types of subsidies announced by the government. That is, for some of the beneficiaries, LPG prices were reduced by 200 rupees. And for all the beneficiaries, LPG price was reduced by 200 rupees. Do not get confused. Listen to the statement correctly first. For some of the beneficiaries, LPG prices were reduced by 200 rupees. And for all beneficiaries, LPG prices were reduced by 200 rupees. Meaning what? Let me take a very simple example. Let's say hypothetically, LPG cylinder price is let's say 1100. Okay, let's say hypothetically, LPG cylinder price is 1100 rupees. Now, whether you are purchasing LPG cylinder, I am purchasing LPG cylinder, doesn't matter. All of us will have to pay 1100. But what government did was, for all of us, everybody who will purchase LPG cylinder, it was reduced by 200 rupees, which means now we will have to pay 900 rupees. You will have to pay 900, I will have to pay 900. But please understand, amongst all the beneficiaries who purchase LPG cylinder, there are some beneficiaries who are covered under Ujjwala Yojana. There are certain beneficiaries who are covered. For example, poor houses. Poor houses are covered under Ujjwala Yojana. And if you are a beneficiary under Ujjwala Yojana, government says pay 900 and receive a LPG cylinder. I will give you 200 rupees. I will give you 200 rupees, which means, can I simply say, if you go by these numbers, what I've written in the slide, if you go by these numbers, I am not Ujjwala beneficiary. I will pay 900 for cylinder now. And if you're Ujjwala beneficiary, you'll effectively pay 700 rupees for a cylinder. All of you okay with this? Anybody has a problem? Do let me know. If you are Ujjwala beneficiary, you will get 200 rupee first, and later you will get additional 200 rupee. But all the beneficiaries will get the first 200 rupee subsidy benefit. And so please be very careful, right? Slightly be careful, because UPSC can ask you a question suddenly on the concept of LPG subsidy because it was there in the current affairs. Now come to the picture that I've written here. Some of you are asking, should we remember the picture? Don't waste your time. UPSC will not ask you the picture. Just to make it simple for you to understand, I've written. First one is a direct subsidy. Second one is indirect subsidy. In direct subsidy, you will purchase a cylinder. You'll pay a certain price, purchase a cylinder. Government will transfer subsidy into your bank account. Government will transfer subsidy into your bank account. Whereas in indirect subsidy, you'll purchase a cylinder, government will provide a subsidy to the distributor, and the distributor will sell the cylinder at lower price to the customer. One is a direct, second one is indirect. Now please tell me, based on the picture at least, can I say indirect subsidies, cash payment is given, that is cash subsidy is given to the beneficiary? Think of it. Please look at the direct subsidy picture. Can I say subsidy? Some of you are saying no. My goodness. Direct subsidy. Direct subsidy. Cash is given, that is, the subsidy is given to the beneficiaries. How difficult is it? Picture is there right in front of you. Picture is there right in front of you. And on the other side, indirect subsidies, government will not give you cash subsidy. Rather, government will ensure that you will get either a good or a service at subsidized prices, at lower prices. All of you okay with this? Direct subsidy as well as indirect subsidy. Now, please be very careful. Whenever you talk about direct and indirect, direct subsidies are much better. Always remember this. Direct subsidies are much better. Why? Please look at the picture and tell me, can I say in direct subsidies, government can come to know who is a beneficiary? Yes or no? Look at the picture and tell me. In direct subsidies, can government come to know who is a beneficiary? Are you a beneficiary? Am I a beneficiary? They can come to know. Whereas in case of indirect subsidies, does government come to know who is a beneficiary? Can government ensure this LPG cylinder at subsidized price will be given only to the right beneficiary? What is the guarantee? Think of it. Imagine I'm a distributor. Indirect subsidy, I'm a distributor. I will get subsidy from the government. What is the guarantee that I will sell the cylinder to you? I can sell the cylinder to a hotel also. I can sell the cylinder to a restaurant also. I can use it for commercial purposes. And if you're wondering what is the problem if I use it for commercial purposes, remember this. For household, that is a domestic purpose, cylinders are generally around 14 kgs. The cylinder weight is around 14 kgs. Whereas for commercial purposes, a cylinder is around 19 kgs. And another very important difference apart from the weight is that in case of commercial cylinders, government will impose a lot of taxes. Government will impose a lot of taxes. A lot of taxes are imposed for a commercial cylinder. That is the reason the commercial cylinders prices will be very high. Right? So I hope you understand. There is a scope of diversion. There's a scope of leakage. Government may not be knowing who is the beneficiary, right? Whether the beneficiary is a right beneficiary or a very rich beneficiary. So all of this can be addressed with the concept of direct subsidies. Correct? All of this can be addressed with the concept of direct subsidies. Right? Please check your house. Please check your house. Some of you, again, I'll answer to your questions, but I'm actually surprised. I'm actually surprised by the type of questions that you people are asking. Couple of students ask me, sir, household cylinder, is it 14 kgs or 40 kgs? My dear, how can you imagine a person lifting 40 kg cylinder, coming to the second floor and handing over to you? Think na. Please think. At least think logically. Right, sir? You did not pronounce it correctly. You said 14. Right? I don't understand whether it is 14 or 40. Let's assume it is confusing. Do you think a bodybuilder is going to lift this particular cylinder, right, bring it for a delivery to your home? Because if you assume it is 40 kgs, right, normal person cannot lift it. A bodybuilder has to come to, right, basically deliver the cylinder to you. How? Right? So I hope you understand. I hope you understand. You don't have to worry about it. You go to your home, enter into kitchen once the class is over, not now. Right? There is a cylinder, just turn it around. Turn it around, they would have written 14.2 or 14.5 kg cylinder. Right? I hope you understand. Okay. Right. So that was one question. And the second question was uh, household, is it direct or indirect? For household, is it a direct or indirect? My dear, think of it. I'll ask you questions now. Very recently, Government of India reduced a 200 rupees cylinder cost for all the houses. Is it direct or indirect? Right? Think of it. Very recently, Government of India reduced LPG cylinders by 200 rupees for every beneficiary. Every beneficiary, underline the term. Every beneficiary. It's indirect. Some of us say direct. No, 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 you're not following the discussion. It is indirect. How indirect? Government said, do not pay 1100, pay 900 rupees. Do not pay 1100 rupees for cylinder, pay 900 rupees. Your cylinder cost will be 900 now. All of you okay with this? So from 1100, cylinder cost will be reduced to 900. But for some of them, that is Ujjwala beneficiaries, for some of them, that is Ujjwala beneficiaries, government said, you pay 900, I will transfer 200 rupees into your bank account. Can I say this is a direct subsidy? Yes or no? Right? For Ujjwala beneficiaries, government said, you pay 900, I will transfer 200 rupees into your bank account. And that is a direct subsidy. So again, argument is whether you are getting the product at subsidized price or are you getting subsidy in the form of money. Right? That determines what is a direct, what is a indirect. Okay. And some of you are asking, sir, the number that you wrote 1100, right, is it an exact number or is it just a hypothetical number? My dear, do you think LPG cylinder prices will be same in all the states in India? Think. Please think. Do you think LPG cylinder prices, petrol prices, diesel prices will be same across all of India? No. In that case, the number that I've taken, it is almost the same number for Delhi. But from one state to another state, the numbers will change. From one state to another state, numbers will keep on changing. Done? Can we go forward now? All of you okay with direct and indirect? Again, do not complicate it. Direct means a subsidy is given to you. Subsidy is given to you. Indirect means the product, it could be a good or a service, will be given to you at lower prices, at subsidized prices. Okay. Now, universal and targeted. Universal, targeted. I'll take a current affairs example. I'll take the current affairs example only. I said every beneficiary, every household in India will get 200 rupees LPG subsidy. Correct? Point number one. Every household, that is whoever has a LPG cylinder will get 200 rupees LPG subsidy. And point number two, only Ujjwala beneficiaries, will get additional 200 rupees subsidy. So based on this, can I say first announcement is a universal subsidy. Second announcement is a targeted subsidy. Yes or no? Just apply common sense. Not difficult. Apply common sense. First one is universal subsidy. That is whether you're rich, poor, doesn't matter. You will get 200 rupees subsidy. But in the second example, government said only Ujjwala beneficiaries will get additional 200 rupees subsidy. So this second subsidy is not available to everyone. It is only for certain identified beneficiaries. So universal, available to all, targeted, beneficiaries will be identified and these benefits will be targeted. I'll give you one more example. What about NFSA? Please tell me. What about National Food Security Act? Do you think 5 kgs of food grains is available to all of us? No. They will identify certain population and they will provide 5 kgs of food grains only to that population. So can I say targeted subsidies? Now you tell me, is it okay if I say targeted subsidies are better compared to universal subsidies? Yes or no? Targeted subsidies are better compared to universal subsidies. Why? Universal can be given to anybody. Rich, poor, middle household, poor farmer, very rich farmer, doesn't matter. Whereas a targeted, you can identify only poor houses, only poor farmers, right? Only these kind of beneficiaries, and I will provide the benefit to them. Right? So targeted subsidies are better compared to universal. Conditional and unconditional. Slightly technical, let me explain it. Listen to me very carefully. Conditional, unconditional. I will take example of FAME initiative. Right? There's a scheme by the name of FAME, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. FAME stands for faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. We are implementing FAME 2 now, FAME 2. Now under FAME 2, government will provide certain subsidies. Okay, government will provide subsidies for electric vehicle manufacturers, EVs, electric vehicles, two-wheeler, three-wheeler, buses, etc. Electric vehicles. But if you want to get subsidy under the FAME 2 initiative, then there are certain conditions which are generally referred to as localization requirements. Localization requirements, meaning what? 50% of the inputs, I repeat, 50% of the inputs that you use, you will have to purchase from the domestic market. 50% of the inputs that you are using, you will have to purchase from the domestic market. Now, please tell me, you are also covered under FAME 2. I am also manufacturer covered under FAME 2. If I meet the condition, if I meet those requirements, only then I will get subsidy. If you meet those requirements, only then you will also get subsidy. So can I say there are certain subsidies which are connected to certain performance or the behavior of the beneficiary? Yes or no? I'll repeat it again. There are certain subsidies which are given, which are provided, which are connected to the performance. That's very important. Performance or the behavior of the beneficiary. If you perform, you will get it. If you do not perform, government will not give it to you. It's as simple as that. Right? All of you okay with this? Right? For example, some of you will say, in that case, sir, what is LPG subsidy? My dear, you tell me, is LPG subsidy connected to your performance? Do you think government of India will tell you, if you read a newspaper every day, Hindu newspaper every day, I will give you 200 rupee LPG subsidy? Is it that condition? No. Whether you read, don't read, despite the faculty shouts, asks you to keep on reading, doesn't matter. Government will give you subsidy. Is the logic okay here? Right? So can I say there are certain subsidies which are conditional in nature. Conditional, that is, you satisfy the conditions. Your performance should be there, your behavior should be there. Only then government will give you subsidy. I'll give you one more example. Government of India, right? There is a component under NFSA which is separate now. Government of India will provide certain amount of subsidies for pregnant and lactating women. For pregnant and lactating women. But Government of India says if you want to get that particular subsidy, you'll have to have institutional delivery. You will have to have institutional delivery. I hope you understand the term institutional delivery. And once the child is delivered, you'll have to get the birth of the child registered. You'll have to get you'll have to get the child vaccinated. If you meet these conditions, only then I will provide you subsidy. So I hope you understand the logic behind it. There are conditions, right? You'll have to perform in a particular way. You'll have to behave in a particular way. Only then subsidies are given to you. If not, no subsidies. Very simple. If not, that subsidy will not be given to you. Right? What about unconditional subsidies? Without any condition, without looking at your performance, without looking at your behavior. Right? For example, the PM Kisan, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. You tell me, 6,000 rupees is connected to performance of a farmer? Have you seen Government of India saying, you are a farmer, you are working for 8 hours, take 6,000. Another farmer, you are working only for 4 hours, take 4,000. No, it is not at all connected to the performance or a behavior of a beneficiary. That is unconditional subsidy. Right? Next one, implicit and explicit. Slightly technical, listen very carefully. Implicit and explicit. Let me start with the implicit as well as explicit here. Explicit simply means those subsidies where Government of India, for that matter state government, has clearly defined, clearly stated who are beneficiaries. Right? For example, PM Kisan. Tell me, has Government of India declared who are beneficiaries under PM Kisan? LPG subsidy. Has Government of India clearly stated who will get LPG subsidy? Right? What about NFSA? The Government of India has clearly stated who will get free food grains. So whenever Government of India, for that matter state government, clearly states who are the beneficiaries in a subsidy, it is called as explicit subsidy. On the other side, implicit subsidy, let me give a very simple example. All of you have traveled in railways. Anybody in the classroom who says, sir, what is a railway? All of you, I'm pretty sure, one or the other point of time, you have traveled in railways. Now in railways, please tell me, will the ticket price for general class, I'm talking about general class, not AC tier 1, tier 2, no, not at all. Even Vande Bharat, I'm talking about a normal train. Okay, so there is a general class ticket. Very simple question to you. General class tickets, are they priced very low or not? Right, the general class tickets, are they very affordable? Of course, yes, very, very affordable. Right, what will cost you in a AC of let's say 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees, and in general class they will charge you 100 rupees. They will charge you 80 rupees. In fact, please remember this, the actual cost of the general class ticket, the actual cost of the general ticket, if it is let's say 200 rupees, government will make sure they will sell it at 80 rupees. But please tell me, does government say this 80 rupees ticket is only for poor people? Can you purchase this 80 rupees ticket? Yes. Can I purchase this 80 rupee ticket? Yes. Can a rich person purchase this 80 rupees ticket? Yes. So can I say in this situation, government is controlling the prices, controlling the supply, and is providing subsidies. Is it okay? Government is controlling the supply, government is controlling the pricing and providing subsidies. This is called as implicit subsidy. This is referred to as implicit subsidy. Government doesn't even say this is subsidy. Government says, right, I want to ensure certain train tickets are very affordable. Right? In fact, understand this. Government incurs a huge amount of losses because of this. All of you have come across this? Government, by providing lot of subsidies in the railways, because it is a social welfare burden for the government. Social welfare burden, social cost. So government, by providing the subsidies in this way, incurs a huge amount of expenditure or incurs a huge amount of loss. But even then government says, doesn't matter, I'll keep on providing the tickets at a very, very affordable prices. This is called as implicit subsidy. How do you define implicit? Whenever you talk about implicit subsidy, the government controls the supply and government controls the prices. Right? Those are called as implicit subsidies. Okay, so implicit as well as explicit. Right? So these are certain classifications associated with the concept of subsidies. I'll give you one more classification now. Listen carefully. One more classification given in IGNO notes is input subsidy, price subsidy, export subsidy, and infrastructure subsidy. This classification is much more easier. This is very, very direct, very straightforward. Input subsidy. What do you mean by input subsidy? Imagine a farmer is there. Farmer will purchase a fertilizer. Government will provide subsidies on fertilizer. Can I say fertilizer is an input? Let me know. Farmer will purchase fertilizer. Government will provide subsidies on fertilizer. Can you say fertilizer is an input? So whenever subsidies are associated with the inputs used, those subsidies are referred to as input subsidies. Those are referred to as input subsidies. What about price subsidy? What about price subsidy? I'll take a current affairs example. Under NFSA, under National Food Security Act, government will provide 5 kgs of food grains. Correct? Government will provide 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost. But don't you think if government wants to give 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost to me, government will have to purchase food grains, transport food grains, store food grains, and for all of it, government will incur expenditure. Does it make sense or not? Government, they want to give me 5 kgs of food grains. Means first government has to purchase, pay money. They will have to transport, pay money. They'll have to store, then pay money, and then sell the food grains to me. So when they will incur expenditure and sell it to me free of a cost, can I say all the expenses incurred by the government is nothing but price subsidies? All of you okay with this? Right? They will purchase it at certain price, give it to me at 0 rupees. So that is nothing but price subsidy. Okay? Export subsidy. I'll directly write example, you tell me. MEIS and SEIS. Can I say these are export subsidies? MEIS and SEIS. Right? Those who are asking what is MEIS and SEIS? MEIS stands for Merchandise Exports from India Scheme. SEIS stands for Service Exports from India Scheme. These schemes were introduced by the government in the foreign trade policy earlier, where government of India provided subsidies, right, which were connected directly to the value of exports. Okay. Infrastructure subsidy. I'll give you an example. There's a scheme being implemented by the government right now, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. We'll discuss AIF separately under agriculture, don't worry. There is a scheme being implemented by the government, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, AIF. Under AIF, government will provide you subsidies for the construction of infrastructure related to agriculture. For example, many of you ask me, What do you mean by infrastructure related to agriculture? Can I say warehousing? Warehousing is agriculture infrastructure. All of you will agree? What about right? Let's say packaging. Packaging is also agriculture related infrastructure. So when you are going to develop infrastructure under AIF, Government of India will provide you subsidies for the construction of this kind of infrastructure. So can I call this as a infrastructure subsidy? And there are multiple examples. Right? There's a scheme by the name of SMAM, Submission on Agriculture Mechanization. Under SMAM, government will provide subsidies for drones. Drones. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of drones. Right? There are many initiatives, many initiatives where infrastructure subsidies are provided. But logic should be very simple to you. When you are developing infrastructure, you will get assistance from the government. That is basically infrastructure subsidy. Okay, done. Right. So that is the infrastructure subsidy. So these are right certain other types. One more classification of subsidies which are given by the government. Let me go to the next one now. Fertilizer subsidy. Right. One I've discussed already, LPG subsidy. One I've already discussed, LPG subsidy. All of you understand LPG subsidy, how it is given now? Anybody has a problem? How LPG subsidies are given by the government? Anybody has a problem with that? What is the full form of PDS? Public Distribution System. PDS stands for Public Distribution System. Okay. Now, I'll discuss one more type of subsidy here. Fertilizer subsidy. Okay. Fertilizer subsidy. What is this fertilizer subsidy? How it is given? Right? How does government calculate? Right? How do they provide, etc.? Let me show it to you. Point number one. What do you mean by fertilizer? Fertilizers are nothing but nutrients. Correct? Fertilizers are nothing but nutrients. It's a combination of nutrients such as phosphorus, such as potassium, such as right, let's say nitrogen, and these nutrients are applied so that the plant growth, right, will be appropriate. For example, right, many of you ask, right, what is a utility, etc., etc. I'm pretty sure all of you, or at least most of you, when your children or when your kids, or some of you even today, would have consumed Boost, Complan, correct? Boost, Complan, Horlicks, etc. And as I'm speaking, I'm fully aware some of you are even consuming it today. Right? Your parents will be still concerned about you. Right? They want you to pass UPSC. And somewhere they would have read Boost is very good for mental health. They will bring and give it to you when you're reading economics. Right? So why do you think we are basically fed with the Boost, Horlicks, or let's say even this? Can I say nutrients? And they will read a Complan is very good for a bone. They will feed Complan day in day out. Keep on feeding Complan. They will Bornvita is good for height, right? Your father, your mother will bring two boxes of Bornvita, give you one in the morning, one in the evening. Logic is simple. To ensure appropriate growth is there, apply the same logic to the plants. Plants also require nutrients. Just like us, plants also require nutrients. But if these nutrients are not available in sufficient quantity in the soil, we need to apply it. We need to supply these nutrients. And that is called as fertilizers. That is nothing but fertilizers, right? So fertilizers are nothing but chemicals of nutrients. Right? Chemicals made of nutrients which is applied to have appropriate growth in plants. Now the three very important nutrients, in fact there are multiple, the three important, or let's say four. The most three important are one, nitrogen, second one is phosphorus, third one is potassium, and in fact fourth one is also there, sulfur, but that requirement is very less. The three very important, right, are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. NPK, right, chemical names, NPK. Okay. Now there are fertilizers available in the market, very famously referred to as urea diammonium phosphate. as well as muriate of potash. Urea, diammonium phosphate, as well as muriate of potash. In urea, a substantial part is nitrogen. 46% of urea is nitrogen. Right? In case of diammonium phosphate, 46% is phosphorus, 18% is nitrogen. Whereas in muriate of potash, 60% is the potassium itself. So that is a precise reason in the market, these kind of combinations are generally sold, which are purchased by the farmers and right applied to the plants. Now, what are the important points here? What are the important points? You require all these three fertilizers, right? Farmers would require all the three types of fertilizers as per their application requirement. Now, what is the status of these fertilizers in India? I'll give you certain data here. Do not by heart it. Remember the concept behind it. And next year in the economic survey, we will get a similar data. If you look at the first graph, observe the first graph. Please observe the first graph. What is your observation? Can I say whether it is right for 16, 17 or for 21 and 22? Most of the production that is done in India is urea. Yes or no? Please look at the graph and tell me. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you look at the data that is given here, historically, most of the fertilizer that is produced in India is nothing but urea, a nitrogenous based fertilizer. And second point is, if you look at the imports, if you look at the imports of the fertilizers, you will see that all the fertilizers, all the types of fertilizers, we actually import into India. All the types of fertilizers. If you talk about DAP, if you talk about MOP, if you talk about urea, all these we will import into India. We'll simply import into India, which means demand is very high. Production in the domestic market is comparatively lesser. It is comparatively lesser. We are not able to meet the demand, hence we are dependent on the import. Now, very simple question to you. Very simple question to you. If you are dependent on the import, what if gas prices, because gas is required, gas is one of the inputs here, remember this. If the gas prices in the international market will go up, can I say fertilizer prices will automatically start increasing? If nitrogen right prices in the international market will start going up, automatically the import prices will start increasing. So all of you will agree. That's the reason I'm asking you, if you have not read that article today, either Hindu, Business Standard, whichever newspaper, read it now. At least you will understand it now. Earlier, what had happened is, in the last couple of years, because of Russia-Ukraine war, etc., etc., the fertilizer prices in the international market had increased. Gas prices were higher, input prices were higher. Hence, Government of India provided lot of subsidies. Government of India provided lot of subsidies. If I want to make it much more simple, imagine government wants to supply fertilizer at 10 rupees to the farmer. Okay, actual cost is 100. Government wants the farmer to pay 10 rupees for a fertilizer. Now, because of international prices, rather than 100 rupees, now it will become, let's say, 130 rupees. But even when it becomes 130, government wants farmers to pay only 10 rupees for the fertilizer, which means based on the numbers that I've written here, can I say government will have to pay out more subsidies? Is it okay? Because of this, government has to pay out more subsidies. That is exactly what has happened in the last couple of years. Right? Look at the data now. That is exactly what has happened in the last couple of years. Now, Government of India says this year, the prices in the international market has fallen. This year, the prices in the international market has fallen. And if the prices will fall, government will still ensure that you will get it at 10 rupees only, but the subsidy burden on the government will come down. All of you are okay with this? That is the reason, right? In today's Hindu newspaper, if you have read it correctly, the gist is very simple. International market prices have fallen. Hence, the cabinet committee has reduced the outlay, has reduced the amount of subsidies that they have allocated for fertilizers. right? Now read the newspaper article again, it will be much more clearer to you. So the point that I'm trying to convey to you people is simple. We import all the fertilizers, all the types of fertilizers, because the production in the domestic market is not sufficient. And we are forced to import, right, urea, we are forced to import DAP, we are also forced to import MOP. In fact, if you look at both of the graphs, you will see that in one of the graph, MOP is not written. This graph I'm talking about. In this graph, that is number one, you will not see any production capacity mentioned for MOP. Whereas in the second graph, you will see we have imported MOP. What does it mean? Because of unavailability of raw materials. I repeat, because of unavailability of raw materials, we do not produce a muriate of potash in India. We import all the requirement of MOP into India. Okay, that is one more very important point. But again, if you look at both of the graphs, right, simple concept. Urea highest produced, urea highest imported, right? MOP not produced, imported, and other form of the fertilizer DAP produced and also imported, right? So can we go forward now? How are the subsidies given? How subsidies are provided for fertilizers? There are two methods. Follow this carefully now. There are two methods. For urea, the government will provide subsidies based on production cost. Whereas for the MOP as well as a DAP, government will provide a subsidy based on a new type of a system which was introduced from 2010, which is called as nutrient based subsidy. Now, what is this? Right, based on cost of production and nutrient based subsidy. Let me explain to you. Imagine I'm a manufacturer. I've produced one bag of urea. I want to sell it in the market at 900 rupees. I'm just taking hypothetical numbers. These are not exact numbers because the exact numbers are much more different today. Just hypothetical calculation. So I've produced one bag of urea. I want to sell it in the market and I want to earn 900 rupees. Government of India says, please don't sell it at 900, sell it at 300 rupees. So can I now say the maximum selling price or maximum retail price of urea bag is decided by the government? Government is telling me don't sell it at 900, sell it at 300 rupees. But I will tell government, if I sell it at 300 rupees, what about the remaining 600 rupees? Government says remaining 600 rupees, government will provide it in the form of subsidies. Very simple. Government will provide the 600 rupees in the form of subsidies to me. So when I will sell the urea to the farmers, I will sell at MRP that is decided by the government, and whatever is the difference between what price I wanted to sell and MRP, the gap is given by the government in the form of subsidy. Right? So that is how subsidies are provided for urea. Now what about nutrient based subsidy? Some of you are asking, should we remember calculation? Absolutely no. Do not waste your time. Do not remember calculations. UPSC will not ask you that. How nutrient based subsidy, right, is actually implemented by the government? Point number one, look at the name, nutrient based subsidy. Look at the name, nutrient based subsidy means what? Government will decide for every kg of nutrients that you consume to manufacture the fertilizer, how much subsidies will be provided. I'll repeat the statement. The government will decide for every kg of nutrient that you consume, how much subsidy will be provided. For example, right, look at this. If I produce, let's say 100 kgs of muriate of potash. Okay, let's say if I produce, although we are not producing, we'll import it, which means government will provide subsidies for imports also. Okay, right. So have a look at this. 100 kgs, if I manufacture of muriate of potash, 60 kgs is just potassium itself. It is just a potassium. And government of India will decide for every 1 kg, for every 1 kg of potassium, how much a subsidy will be given to manufacturer. For every 1 kg of potassium, how much subsidy will be given to the manufacturer. Can I call this as nutrient based subsidy? Right? If you want this to be much more clear, let's say diammonium phosphate. If you manufacture 100 kgs of diammonium phosphate, you will require 18 kgs of nitrogen and 46 kgs of phosphorus. Government will give for every 1 kg of nitrogen, government will give you some subsidy, and for every 1 kg of phosphorus, government will give you certain amount of subsidy. So I've just shown you certain calculations here. Just go through that. Do not by heart. Do not worry about calculation. These are not exact calculations. I know for a fact because the numbers have already changed. From 1 year to next year, government will keep on changing the amount of subsidy for every kg. So whatever data I've given here, it is simply a hypothetical calculation. Do not by heart it. UPSC will not ask you, don't waste your time. But is the logic okay? Looking at the calculation or looking at the concept here, under nutrient based subsidy, for every 1 kg of nutrient that you will use as a raw material to manufacture fertilizer, government will provide subsidy. Whereas in the context of urea, government will simply provide the difference between the cost of production and the MRP decided by the government in the form of subsidy. And these are the two different types of subsidies which are given by the government for fertilizers. Now, based on this, you people tell me, which one do you think is more rational? Which methodology do you think is more rational? Is nutrient based subsidy more rational, or right, the urea subsidy more rational? All of you will agree with the second system, correct? All of you will agree with the second system, nutrient based subsidy, right? So there is a discussion now. In fact, many experts have recommended that government should include even urea under nutrient based subsidy. As of now, government doesn't give you the subsidies for urea based on NBS. No, it is not covered under NBS. Many of you will keep on asking me why is it not covered, etc., etc. My dear, reason is simple here. Anything whose demand is very high in the market, very high in the market, if government will try to regulate it, there will be a black market for it. A black market will get created for it. All of you understand the term black market? Black market means the sales, right? A particular type of sales which is not allowed by the government. Right? Certain types of sales which is not allowed by the government, that is called as a black marketing. For example, let me ask you a very simple question. Gold. When you purchase gold, don't you think government of India has a law wherein you'll have to pay taxes when you purchase gold, GST, correct? But even then, have you not seen certain people who will try to purchase gold and certain people trying to sell gold who are not part of any shops? Right? In villages, in cities, you'll see certain people who will come to your home, sell gold directly to you without any receipt, only guarantees, personal guarantees like this. Right? And they will not collect any GST from you, they will not pay any GST to the government. Black marketing. And that is a precise reason, right? Whenever any product whose demand is very high, if government will try to impose more taxes, will try to control the market price, etc., etc., lot of unscrupulous sales will happen. Lot of black marketing will happen for that product. For example, if government will impose a very high tax on a gold, don't you think people will start smuggling gold from UAE as well as Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi for that matter? Yes or no? Have you not come across these newspaper articles where people will hide 2 kgs of gold here, 2 kgs of gold there, and they'll be caught in the customs. Why do you think they do that? Right? Why do you think they do that? Right? They know that if they can somehow smuggle the product into India, they will make huge amount of returns. They'll be able to sell it in the black market and make huge amount of returns. So argument is simple. There are a lot of products whose demand is very high. Government purposely, it's not that government doesn't know it. Government purposely will continue with the same system whatever is existing, because they know that if they switch to a new system, a black market will get created. Okay, right? So these are certain important points regarding concept or fertilizer subsidies. Right, have a look at this. Fertilizer subsidy given by the government. Do not buy heart any data. This data is of no use for you. If you read today's newspaper, in the newspaper itself, a new table is given as per the latest data. Look at that data. Do not buy heart it. Please do not buy heart the number. Just observe the trend. In the last 5 years, has it increased, has it decreased, etc., etc. Just observe that trend. Do not buy heart numbers. UPSC will not ask you the numbers. Now, certain important points. Agriculture urea is the most subsidized, most produced, most imported, and most controlled. Now, many of you ask me, what do you mean by most physical controlled? Understand the logic here. Government, when you manufacture fertilizer, government will impose regulations as to in which market you are supposed to sell this fertilizer. Right? Are you allowed to take it all the way to 5,000 kilometers away, sell it there? Or are you allowed to sell this fertilizer in a vicinity, in a radius of, let's say, 200 kilometers, like this? Controls are imposed. Physical controls are imposed by the government. Okay? Right? So that is a feature associated with agriculture urea. Apart from this, in case of agriculture urea, government provides a subsidies based on cost of production. For DAP as well as MOP, government will provide it under nutrient-based subsidy. Next, government will tightly control who is allowed to import urea into India. Generally, there are government-owned companies such as IPL, India Potash Limited, Rashtriya Chemicals and Fertilizers, and National Fertilizers Limited, etc. These kind of agencies, only these agencies are allowed to import urea into India. Nobody else is allowed to import urea. But on the other side, DAP, MOP, etc., even private sector companies are allowed to import those fertilizers. Okay. For the urea, government will decide what is the MRP. Government will decide, right? Whereas in case of the MOP as well as DAP, the companies, the sellers will decide what is the MRP. Provides a subsidy for the domestic manufacturers as well as importers. Movement of the fertilizer is directed in which market you are supposed to sell how much, right? Certain controls are imposed by the government. So these are some of the very important features associated with the concept of fertilizer production as well as subsidies and sales. Now, last point before I take up questions, international trade questions are there, I'll take it up. Before that, what are the issues in a fertilizer sector when subsidies are provided? What are the issues? Point number one, the agriculture urea. The agriculture urea is the cheapest available fertilizer in the domestic market. I will repeat the statement. Agriculture urea, it is the cheapest available fertilizer in the domestic market. Now, simple question to you. Here is a farmer. They know that urea is the cheapest fertilizer. Don't you think in that case, they will consume lot of urea? And when I say consume, do not take it literally. And when I say consume, it's not that they're eating. Consumption means using. So can I say, because urea is the cheapest available fertilizer, they will purchase a lot of urea and use a lot of urea. And what is there in urea? Mainly nitrogen. And if you use and apply lot of nitrogen to the soil, can it lead to nitrogen pollution? Can it lead to, right, reduction in the fertility of the soil? Can it lead to a situation where, right, in ecology and environment would have come across this, Eutrophication. Have you read E&E, ecology and environment? Eutrophication, algal blooms. That is basically the rainfall will happen. The nitrogen which is available in the soil will flow, get collected in a pond. Nitrogen very high means algal growth will be very high. The pond ecosystem will be destroyed. This process is called as eutrophication, right? Algal blooms creation. So I hope you understand. Lot of environmental concerns are associated with these kind of fertilizer subsidies. Farmers, rather than using them correctly, might misuse them or abuse the fertilizers. As a result of this, ecological impact will be felt, right? It will be felt. Second one is the fertilizer. Understand this very carefully. The fertilizer, which is nothing but chemical, such as the fertilizer containing potassium. K is nothing but potassium. And the students with the chemistry background will be very happy at least now. The fertilizer which has a chemical that is nitrogen, N, a chemical of phosphorus, right? A fertilizer. Can I say these kind of chemicals are used even in industries? Yes or not? These kind of chemicals are used even in industries. For example, those chemicals are used in explosive makings, explosives, production of explosives, hazardous chemicals. So lot of industrial use is also there. So when government will provide fertilizer subsidy like this, what is the guarantee that the subsidy, that is fertilizer, will go to only farmers? What if these fertilizers, that is chemicals again, will get diverted for industries? Yes or no? Can it be diverted? Can it be sold to industrial houses? Of course, yes, that is very much possible. It is very much possible. In fact, I'll give you an article regarding this tomorrow, don't worry. So diversion can take place. So there is a concern. There is a concern that one, lot of fertilizer subsidies are provided, right? The expenditure burden for the government is very high. Second one is right, environmental impact with higher usage of nitrogen. And what if there is a black market and diversion of these fertilizers will take place? Right? All these are the concerns. All these are basically the concerns regarding fertilizer subsidies which are provided by the government. So what has the government of India done? What has government of India done in order to address these kind of issues? First one, we'll discuss this later, don't worry. Have you come across the concept of nano fertilizers? Have you come across the concept of nano fertilizers? Very famous now. Nano urea is available. Nano DAP is available. Nano fertilizers are nothing but liquid fertilizers. Very simple. Nano fertilizers are nothing but liquid fertilizers. That is, if you just go to Google and type, right, let's say, just go to Google and type urea. Just type urea and go to images tab. You will see urea is basically in the form of crystals, white crystals, just like your sugar. Check it later, right? By the way, if you go to Google and type urea and go to, right, or fertilizer urea and go to the tab of images, you will see that urea is basically in the form of white crystals, just like sugar crystals, right? So physical urea, or let's say the traditional urea is in the form of white crystals, right? It's a chemical, pure chemical. Import dependence is very high, etc., etc. Now government is actually promoting liquid urea, right, or nano urea. And what is the advantage? Government of India says we'll be able to produce huge amount of nano urea in India itself. Because remember this, one of the cooperatives, IFCO company, there's a company, right, that is cooperative by the name of IFCO, Indian Farmer and Fertilizer Cooperative Society. IFCO has developed the first nano urea in the world. It has developed the first nano urea in the world, which means liquid urea. And government says one bottle of liquid urea, which is nothing but half a liter, 500 ml. One bottle of liquid urea, 500 ml bottle, it can easily be a substitute for one bag of urea. I'll repeat the statement. One bottle of liquid urea can easily substitute one bag of urea. Right? One bag of urea, please remember, right? I'll tell you a very funny point regarding this. Right? Just understand the logic behind it. Traditionally, the fertilizer bags are sold in, right, 50 kgs. That is 50 kgs per bag. Traditionally, the bags, fertilizer bags are weighed 50 kgs in a bag. But in case of urea, what government did was, rather than packaging in 50 kgs, government generally packages in 45 kgs, right, per bag. In case of urea, 50 kg is not present, rather 45 kgs of urea is present. Some of you might be thinking, why? What is the logic behind it? The government realized that whenever farmers purchase fertilizers, especially urea, because urea is the cheapest, they purchase lot of urea. They go to shop and purchase in number of bags. Right? They will go to shop and say, give me 10 bags of urea, give me 5 bags of urea, give me 8 bags of urea. Right? Now government of India basically looked at it and said, if I sell it at 50 kg per bag, they will purchase, let's say, 10 bags. What if I will reduce the weightage of the bag? Rather than 50 kgs, I'll put only 45 kgs. Even now, the farmer will go to the shop and say, give me 10 bags of urea. Which means, can I simply say, government, by reducing the weightage in per bag of urea, in this example, has reduced the consumption of 50 kgs of urea? Correct? Assuming they have purchased 10 bags. Don't say, sir, only 5 kgs. Assuming you have purchased 10 bags without realizing, because you generally talk and purchase in terms of bags. So government, by reducing the weightage per bag, has reduced the consumption of urea by 50 kgs. This is one more very important reform. Remember that government has actually implemented it. Okay, so nano fertilizer, right? That is one reform. The reduction in the weightage of the bags, that is another reform. There is one more very important reform. That is the concept of DBT, direct benefit transfer in fertilizers. DBT, direct benefit transfer in fertilizers. What is this DBT in fertilizers? Let me explain this. Listen carefully. Government, under the DBT in fertilizer, will identify the beneficiary, and the beneficiary, that is a farmer, when they will go to the shop to purchase fertilizers, they will have to identify themselves. I'll tell you how it will happen. The farmers, when they will go to the shop to purchase fertilizer, they will have to identify themselves and purchase the fertilizer. What is the use of it? Why has the government introduced it? Have a look at it. Earlier system, that is a non-DBT, what used to happen? Look at the process here. I'll write the steps. Step number 1, producer will manufacture the fertilizer, send it to the shop, let's say to the villages. Step number 2, right, the farmer will go to the shop, purchase the fertilizer. Step number 3, government will provide subsidy to the producer. Now look at the steps, look at the picture and tell me, in this system, right, again I'm talking about only the first system. In this system, do you think it is possible for government to find out who is the purchasing party? That is, who has purchased this subsidized fertilizer? Can government of India come to know? First system. Some of you are saying yes. How? Please tell me. I'm talking about only the system 1, non-DBT. But come to the second. Come to the second part. Right? Under the DBT system, point number 1, producer will manufacture the fertilizer, send it to the shops. When in the shop the fertilizer will come, the farmer will come to the shop, identify himself or herself. How can the farmer identify? Can farmer provide the thumbprint and system will show, right, the Aadhaar number is so and this is the name of the farmer? Yes? Possible or not? right? They will provide the thumbprint. Aadhaar database is available, and now a slip will be generated. A receipt is generated saying that this farmer will purchase so and so amount of fertilizer. Now this record is created. This is important. This record is created, right? The record says farmer XYZ has purchased 5 bags of urea, 10 bags of urea, etc. Now step number 3, right? The government will look at the record, ensure that this subsidy has gone to only the farmer, and now transfer the subsidy to the producer. So can I say under the DBT system, we can check whether the fertilizers are being purchased by the farmers or non-farmers, whether it is being diverted to industries or it is being sold to the farmers. Can we check it under DBT now? Direct benefit transfer. DBT system is being implemented. This system is being implemented. This is how Government of India says, I'll be able to control the amount of a subsidy expenditure that would have been higher in case of a diversion of fertilizers. Right? So this is right, basically one more reform that has been implemented, by the government in the fertilizer market. Farmer should identify himself or herself either by using Aadhaar card or by using Kisan credit card. Subsidy will get credited to the manufacturer. It is estimated that with this, at least 20% of the subsidy expenditure can be saved by the government. Okay, right. So these are certain important points regarding the concept of subsidy in fertilizer sector. Next is direct benefit transfer, which we will take up in the next class. Next one will be the concept of DBT, which we'll take it up in the next class, that is tomorrow itself. We'll start discussing DBT, then we'll shift to agriculture sector. Now, let me go back to the questions. Let me go back to the questions that we are yet to discuss on international trade. Let's start. Okay, 48% have answered correctly. Let's start. Price of any currency in the international market is decided by World Bank. Wrong. Demand for goods and services provided by the country concerned. Yes. Stability of the government of the concerned country. Yes. Economic potential of the country. Do you think potential, right, will determine what is the exchange rate? No. What is the growth? What is the growth that you are experiencing? That will determine. Right. So 2 and 3 are right. Right option for the question will be option B, 2 and 3 only. Next one. Hey Baba, why did I answer wrong or you people have answered wrong? Let's start. Right, I don't know whether I've given correct or not. Let's see. Let's see. Which of the following constitutes capital account? Array, my mistake then. My mistake. My mistake. Those who have answered B, they are correct. By mistake, I pressed A. My mistake. Right? Don't worry. Foreign loans are taken and given. Capital account. Correct. Foreign direct investment. Capital account. Correct. Remittances are part of current account. Remittances part of current account. Wrong. Portfolio investment, right? Institutional investment, portfolio investment, a part of current account. Yes. So I made a mistake. Right? My mistake. Right? By mistake, I pressed for A. Those who have answered B, they are correct. Again, those who have answered B, congrats, you are right. Right? By mistake, I took A. Okay. Next one. Okay. 62% have answered correctly. Balance of payments of a country is a systematic record of all import and export transactions. Many of you will misunderstand this term transactions. I'm not saying imports and exports. I'm saying import transactions as well as export transactions. Okay. So all import and export transactions of a country during a given period, normally a year. Correct. Goods exported from a country during a year. That is not balance of payment. It is just a component within the balance of payment. Wrong. Economic transaction between the government of one country to another country. It is just a part of the balance of payment, not a complete balance of payment. Wrong. Capital movements from one country to another country. If you're talking about capital movements, what about goods and services? What about remittances? Right. So again, wrong. Right option will be option A. All import and export transactions of a country during a given period, normally a year. Okay. Next one. 47% have answered correctly. I'll tell you one reason why some of you would have made a mistake. You would have not read this particular term correctly. Would have not read the question statement correctly. That could be one of the reason why many of you would have ticked the wrong answer for it. Which of the following are the contributors for decline of current account deficit? Which of the following will reduce the current account deficit? Okay. So restriction on non-essential imports. If you impose restriction on non-essential imports, automatically the imports will come down. And when imports will come down, current account deficit will also come down. First one is correct. Export to demand slowdown. If your exports will slow down, right, the inflow of dollars will come down. So the deficit will become wider, not narrower. Second one is wrong. Increase in exports. If you export more and more, right, exactly opposite to the second point, right, the deficit will narrow. Reduce the current account deficit. Right. So first and third is correct. Right option will be option A, only 1 and 3. Next one. Okay, 75% have answered correctly. Convertibility of the rupee implies what? Means what? Being able to convert rupee notes into gold? No, that is not convertibility. Allowing the value of the rupee to be fixed by the market forces, that is floating exchange rate. That is also wrong. Freely permitting the conversion of rupees to other major currencies and vice versa. A day for yesterday, not yesterday, day for yesterday. We have discussed this. What do you mean by convertibility? Is there any restriction, or you can freely convert without any restriction or condition rupee to other currency and vice versa? Point C is correct. Developing an international market for currencies in India? No, that is not convertibility. So right option for the question will be option C here. Okay, 52% have answered correctly. Let's solve it. The effect of devaluation of a currency is that it necessarily improves the competitiveness of domestic exports in the foreign market. First point is correct. Anybody has a problem? First point is straightforward. If you devalue your currency, your export competitiveness will increase. Point one is correct. Increases the foreign value of the domestic currency, that is in the foreign market, value of your domestic currency increases. No, if you devalue, value of your domestic currency falls down against a foreign currency. So second one is wrong. Improves the trade balance. Please tell me, if India will devalue its currency, let me ask you the same question. If India will devalue its currency, please tell me how many of you think that as a result of this devaluation, India's trade balance will improve? Answer. How many of you think a trade balance will improve? Right? Do you think right India's trade balance will start improving? No, it might become worse. It might simply become worse. Why? India is a net importer. India is a net importer, so trade balance will not improve. It might become much worse. So third one is wrong. So it doesn't necessarily means improvement. It can become worse. So first one is correct. Point A, sorry, option A, first statement only is correct. Okay. I believe this is the last question. Okay. This is the last MCQ. We'll solve it. After that, we'll stop. Okay, 35% have answered correctly. Let's start. An increase in the nominal effective exchange rate indicates appreciation of rupee. This was asked last year. Last time the prelims. You can check the paper. Okay. An increase in the nominal effective exchange rate indicates appreciation of rupee. Correct or not? If near index, if remember it, if near index will improve, does it indicate Indian rupee is appreciating against a basket of currencies? Yes. Yesterday only we have discussed this. Right? I told you 1 rupee is equal to, let's say, $10. then it will become $12. From 100, the index number will become 120. So Indian rupee has appreciated. First statement is correct. An increase in the real effective exchange rate indicates an improvement in trade competitiveness. Tell me, if REER number increases, if the index of REER increases, does it mean India's trade is becoming more competitive? No, it is becoming less competitive. Exactly opposite. Third one, right? I told you about this statement yesterday also, right? First session, please check the video. An increase in the trend in domestic inflation relative to inflation in other countries is likely to cause an increase in divergence between NEER and REER. Because in NEER, we are not accounting for inflation. In REER, we are accounting for inflation. So if inflation in India will start increasing, automatically there will be a gap, more gap between NEER index as well as REER index. Third statement is also correct. So first one is correct, third one is correct. Right option for the question will be option C, 1 and 3 only. Okay. So this is the discussion I wanted to have today, as well as solve questions. Descriptive questions are left out. Do not worry, do not panic. We will take up questions tomorrow. Descriptive questions are left out. Please don't worry. We'll take up questions tomorrow. By the way, I've shown the leaderboard, but please don't be worried about the leaderboard. Don't say I've answered all of them, even then my name is not there in the top. In one of the questions I have made mistake, I take responsibility for it. In one of the questions I made mistake, so maybe because of that, it's computer, it's system, it doesn't realize that I have made a mistake. So because of that, your name may not be there in the top, but please don't worry. Okay, now before I wind up the discussion, if there are any doubts, any questions from your side, please do let me know. Otherwise, we will stop the discussion. But for PM Kisan, the person must be a farmer. Then is it not a conditional? My dear, conditional means it is a dependent on your performance. It is a dependent on your behavior. Farmer, right? It cannot be called as a performance. It cannot be called as a behavior, right? Farmers getting subsidy, it is not a conditional subsidy. If government will give subsidies to the farmer based on the work that they are doing, then it becomes conditional. Okay. In subsidy criticism, ill targeting doesn't allow for optimal utilization of resources. These both points are same actually. My dear, the context that I've discussed, listen to me very carefully. Ill targeting, which means we are not identifying the right beneficiaries, and as a result of this, our overall expenditure could be very, very high. And as such, all the people do not require assistance from the government, only those who require should be targeted. That was the context. And optimal utilization of the resources, you can talk in the form of cash, you can talk even in the form of water resources. If government will provide a free electricity to the farmer, they will use the pumps. Electricity is free. They will use pumps, draw more and more water. That is not optimal utilization of natural resources. So the context that I discussed are two different contexts. Please be very careful. Difference between explicit and implicit. In case of implicit, government doesn't say it is a subsidy. Government doesn't define subsidy. Government simply will control the price, sell it at a lesser price, thereby providing subsidies to you. For example, please tell me, if you go to railway station, does government tell you I'm going to give you railway subsidies? Think of it. Does government tell you if you purchase a, right, let's say general class ticket, does government tell you I'm giving you railway subsidies? No. And does government exactly define who are beneficiaries who are going to purchase general class tickets? No. So by controlling supply, by controlling prices, government will be able to give you certain subsidies. But on the other side, if government will basically say farmers are the beneficiaries, right? Poor people are beneficiaries. Household is a beneficiary, right? Those are explicit subsidies. Explicit subsidies. Okay. Price subsidy, government will purchase and sell to you at a lower price. Thereby providing certain subsidies in the form of prices. Okay. Does for the subsidies for pregnant and lactating women institutions means delivery of child in a hospital? Yes. Institutional deliveries basically are hospital deliveries. Okay. What are benefits of indirect subsidies? Right. Generally, indirect subsidies are lagging behind in terms of direct subsidies. That is the reason government actually is shifting lot of these subsidies from indirect to direct. Okay, done. So let me stop the discussion today here. Let me stop the discussion today here. Tomorrow we'll continue with the discussion. We'll start from direct benefit transfer. Descriptive questions are left out in this chapter. We'll discuss that also tomorrow. Okay. And by the way, tomorrow is Friday. I hope you remember what is the ritual, what is the practice, what is the convention we have done. Right. Every Friday, I'll give you a set of articles. You're supposed to read them. You are preparing for exams, not me. Right? Do not behave as if I am preparing for exams. Absolutely no, my dear. You are preparing for exams. I will give you a list of articles, right? Somewhere around 15 articles. Saturday, Sunday, read them. Okay, done. So let me stop the discussion today here. Tomorrow we'll start from sharp 5 p.m. Good night. Take care.